The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we are webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. It's Friday. We're already into May. I can't even believe that. I don't know about you if you're shocked about that, but it's Friday, the first Friday of May. Some of you will be celebrating Cinco de Mayo this weekend, and more importantly, it's Friday. And we've been a little giddy around here the last couple of days. I don't know why. Maybe it's just spring in the air. But we're going to be with you for the next 3 hours live talking about topics. Oh, there's our gremlins. Yes, this is why we got a little giddy yesterday. From time to time, because we're a live show, things will happen, right? That's the nature of live. And we try to have a sense of humor about it. And sometimes we have technical difficulties. And when we do, there's my third gremlin. We'll tell you that we have gremlins in the studio. That's our expression. So our wonderful technical director, Emily Goodwin, has made us some graphics that maybe your kids will enjoy. In fact, if your kids like them, if you want to write into us, and while your kids are watching, if they're watching live, we'll make the gremlins come out. I think we've named them Larry, Curly, and Mo. So that's a little why we're a little giddy the last couple of days. But in any case, we are going to be talking about topics having to do with autism and how we can be more effective, more efficient working with our children on the autism spectrum. Whether you're a parent, a teacher, a practitioner, I know how important that is to you. You want to be a strong person on the team, right? When I realized that it was going to take a team, you know what they say about children, it takes a village to raise a child, but when it's a child on the autism spectrum, we're talking about a small city, right? You got to have a team. You have to. And if you don't have a team yet, bless you, join us here because we'll be a part of your team. We want to be a part of your team. And you need to have support in lots of different directions to help you to get through this journey. It's just, it's a fact of life. I know that so many times I would berate myself because I'm an autism parent, and I would berate myself and think, I should be able to do this. Why can't I do this? I should be able to do this by myself. And sometimes people that don't have a child on the spectrum will say, well, I take care of my child. Why can't you do this by yourself? Well, you know what? We can't. So I don't discuss that anymore. I just go, it's not possible, and I'm sorry that you don't understand, but it's not possible. We need a team. And once you realize and accept I need a team and you start gathering your team together, I think it occurs to us at some point, hey, I don't want to be the weakest person on this team. I want to be one of the leaders on this team. I want to be one of the rock stars on this team. Well, I want to help you to be a rock star on your child's team. And the people that I work with, they're rock stars, and they are in the business of helping other people to be rock stars. It's an amazing, amazing thing. So we're going to talk a lot about ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis. And if you're wondering why we talk about ABA so much, it's because it is the gold standard in treatment according to the Surgeon General. It is the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. And not only that, it's effective for all of our kids. And what I mean by effective is that we're going to see progress. The outcomes are all going to be different, all right? And I want you to know that we talk about recovery because recovery is possible, but nobody is saying that it's possible for all of our children. However, if they're given the right amount of quality ABA therapy early enough, what we see statistically from the science, from the studies that have been done, around 47% of kids will get to the point where they no longer qualify for their diagnosis. That's a really exciting number, and I think all of our kids deserve that opportunity, wouldn't you say? And I don't know about you, but as a mom, when I found that out and I said, okay, that's great, and that's the best number that's out there, that's the only number that's out there, so I want to give my child that opportunity. But I wanted to know what happened to the other 53%. What, if our best case scenario was to be in that 47%, what happened to the other 53%? And when I discovered, looking at the studies, that all of those kids made progress, they didn't get to the point where they lost their diagnosis, but they all of them made progress. I said, okay, I'm in. Where do we sign up? How do we get this done? Now that's a journey in and of itself, right? ABA is this huge field, and our kids are on this huge spectrum. So sorting it all out can be difficult to begin with. And then, of course, there's the sheer magnitude of the hours that you want to have ABA in your home and what it's going to cost. And that's all a part of this journey. And the stress that comes with that is overwhelming, right? So we talk about all of those things and more, and how we can set ourselves up for success to be a really strong member of our child's team, and how we can set our child up for success. It's a lot. So we take 3 hours a day to talk about that. We're going to bring experts in here to talk with you. And from time to time, we have parents in to talk to you about different things. It's going to be an exciting day here today. And we always like to remind you that everything that we do here is meant to be a conversation. We want your input. We want to know what you're thinking, what you like, what you don't like, what you need more of, what you need less of. Give us your suggestions for topics. Give us your questions. I said I'm a parent because that's exactly what I am. I am not a behavior expert. I am not an autism expert. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a doctor, but I'm a mom. And so I get the emotional side of this journey. My son is now about to be 9. He was diagnosed at 2.5. And he's doing really well. Guess what? He's not in that 47%. He's in the other 53%, but he is in completely included 3rd grade, excelling, talking about when he goes to college. And notice that I said talking, because my son was largely nonverbal at the time that he was diagnosed. He had 5 words, utterances that he would use sparingly but not with meaning, and we just kept losing language. So I think we were in danger of losing even that. So very profoundly affected at the point of diagnosis, and the conversations that we have. Just last night, we were in the car coming home, and he said to me, "How did the astronauts figure out that there was no oxygen on the moon?" And I said, "Oh my gosh, that's a good question. I don't know. What do you think?" And he said, "Well, they had to have sent up a probe at some point that could take data on what was in the atmosphere." This is the child who wouldn't respond to his own name and couldn't make any eye contact and had no receptive language. So when I talk about ABA and how excited I am about ABA and excited to help you get access to it, it's personal. So just know that. It's really personal, and I can take whatever criticism that you have to offer because of that. It's personal. I want to help you help your child. And by the way, I said I'm not an expert in all those things, but why am I sitting here? Because they've given me access to the experts on your behalf. So if you have a question, I get to go ask people. I have, if it were old-fashioned, it would be the Rolodex, but I have a bunch of phone numbers of people that I can call and consult with, BCBAs, experts in the field. Sometimes I'm able to get them here in the studio with us. Other times I can just call them on your behalf. So please take advantage of that. I want to be part of your team in that respect. Okay. There are lots of ways to get a hold of us so that you can tell me what it is you want to know. If you're watching us on autism-live.com right now, and across the top of your screen it says either live or rebroadcast. If it says live, you can just type in your question right in the forum right there that says your question, hit enter. You don't have to log in or do anything else. It will show up here on my desktop magically so we can be having that conversation. If it says rebroadcast, there are lots of ways that you can get in touch with us, and of course one of the easiest ways is through email. So we're going to put that up on the screen for you. You can email us. When you email us, we'll answer your question on the next available live show, but we'll also send you a typewritten response to your question so that if you happen to miss that next live show, you've still got the response. So we hope that you'll participate in terms of email, but there are other ways that you can participate with us too. You can phone in. When we're live, you can be patched directly into the studio and you and I can be having a conversation. When we have a guest, you can be talking to them. We're going to be with Dr. Jonathan Tarbox in the 11 o'clock hour today. If you want to talk to Dr. Tarbox, call in. You can also Skype in during the live show. And if you've got your hair in a way that you like and you've got video on your camera, then we can have your picture up side by side with us and be having that conversation. I want to remind you too that if you're calling in and it's after hours, you can speak to somebody else or you can leave us a message and we'll get back to you. You can also have conversations with us on Facebook. So many of you are answering the question of the day on Facebook and we love that. I love that you guys talk to each other on Facebook and are making friends. That's all part of that team, right? We need to have other parents who can tell us, what you're feeling is okay and you're going to survive it. And what your child is going through, I've seen before. And here's how it ended for us. So definitely connect on Facebook. You can also tweet us. I'm new to the whole Twitter thing, but I'm catching up. And we love it when you guys tweet us. So that's a wonderful thing. I also want to mention that there are other ways in which you could be viewing the show that might be more convenient for you depending on what your schedule is like. We are now available on blip.tv and you can go, there's a whole channel for us and you can click on different videos, you can search things, you can fast forward. It's kind of like having it DVR'd for you. Don't we love this day and age? And then of course there's YouTube. You can be watching on YouTube and there's some wonderful shorter clips there if you're looking for a specific topic with one of the experts. That's a great place to go to. And you can also watch us on iTunes. And again, you can download, you can even subscribe so that they automatically come into your box and you can be fast forwarding, rewinding, whatever is convenient for you. And very soon, I know I keep promising it, you'll be able to download the audio only version. So if you're listening in your car or you're walking or on the treadmill and you want to listen to a discussion with an expert, you absolutely can. Keep in mind that in all of those different venues, usually they have a way that you can converse with us as well, but you can still be emailing us, calling us, Skyping us. We love your comments. Absolutely. We want to be of service for you here. And so when you tell us what you need, it makes us really happy. We talk about reinforcement all the time for our kids. Let me just tell you that it's very reinforcing for us. Somebody said to me the other day, well, I don't want to bother you. You don't want to bother me. Bother me. That's what I'm here for. It's not a bother. Okay, we like to start every morning with something that we call the jargon of the day. We know how important it is to make friends with the jargon surrounding autism and ABA. Sometimes it gets ridiculous, right? That I always find it hilarious, in a really horrible way, but hilarious. I got to find what to laugh about, right? When I'm talking to somebody, how many jargon words they put into a sentence before I get to a word that I actually understand. I just find it funny because I have no choice but to find it funny, right? If I didn't find it funny, I would sit and cry about it. And there were days when I would get mad about it. Well, we don't want to get mad about it. We want to be the best possible team member for our child's team. And that means learning some new words and phrases and making friends with them. So this week in particular, we were talking about words that you might hear at school on your child's IEP or when you're having an IEP meeting or a meeting with some of the officials to talk about services. So I call it Alphabet Land, right? They have a shortened name for everything. And we've already talked about today's anagram briefly the other day, but it is APE. Now you look at that and you think ape. Well, we're talking about apes. We're talking about primates today, but we're not. APE stands for Adaptive Physical Education. And it may be that your child, this never comes up in conversation, but when you do a triannual IEP, which was one of our words, I think, on Monday, you're going to have at least every 3 years, if your child has been diagnosed with any kind of thing that means that they have special needs, at least every 3 years, you're going to sit down with a team of people to discuss what the proper course of action is to have your child meet goals and be able to access the curriculum as best as they can. And every 3 years, they're going to want to assess your child to see what they need. It does not go hand in hand that APE will go with autism, right? We've talked this week about the fact that more than likely you're going to want some OT, occupational therapy, and more than likely you're going to want some speech therapy from a speech and language pathologist, SLP, which was our anagram for yesterday. But not all kids need APE. And what's dicey for me here is that sometimes because not all kids need it, it gets left out of the conversation. And we need for that not to happen, right? Because you have the ability to request at any point an evaluation by an APE instructor to see if your child's skills are up to par. We know that in most places there is some form of physical education that comes with school, right? And it's the gross motor kinds of things. In fact, let me go to the next slide, which is our working definition. Support services for mostly gross motor skills. It's going to be things like team sport things, dribbling a basketball, being able to throw a ball, being able to catch a ball, being able to hit a ball with a bat, kick a ball, playing soccer, being able to run, being coordinated, having that all physically make sense, but being able to play games, which becomes a social thing, I have to say. You may discover the first time that my son was evaluated when he was 3 years old, in terms of his APE goals, he was ahead. He was a very busy little boy, constantly running and constantly climbing on things. And I share with you all the time, I have a good friend who has two very well-behaved, intelligent, kind and considerate now teenage boys, but they were always well-behaved. And we would always say to her, Renee, what is your secret? How did you get these well-behaved boys? And she would say, you gotta run them like dogs. Just keep them as busy as possible. And my son was so busy, and before he was diagnosed, I would run him. So when he had his first evaluation at 3, in terms of his balance, he was testing like a 4-year-old, and he was very active, and gross motor was all pretty much working, and he was pretty coordinated. He was either at where he was supposed to be or a little bit advanced. And I was so thrilled about that at that time because he was so far behind in everything else, you guys. And I clung to that. It became my running joke. They would talk about, well, his language skills were that of a 12-month-old. And I would go, yes, but he can balance like a 4-year-old, and they all thought I was nutty. But sometimes you need something to hold on to. Great. Fast forward a couple of years, and we had very intensive ABA, and we were involved in getting our child to speak again. Right? Big deal. But it meant that we weren't outside running and playing as much. We still did, and you have to find time for that. But we were so focused on some of the other things that when his next triennial came up, I said, we need to test him again and see if he is a little bit behind now. And in fact, he was just enough behind to qualify for APE. This comes in addition to the physical education that the school provides. We know with our kids that sometimes when they get behind on something, that going in and dealing with all the sensory of other kids doesn't give them an opportunity to catch up, even if they're given multiple opportunities. Sometimes we have to meet separately, work on skills, excuse me, and then integrate that into a setting with other kids with all the sensory things. And that's really what APA can do for our kids. And it helped my son so much with being able to throw a ball, bat, do all of those things. So APE, if you need to, ask for it. And your child can get evaluated. Okay. We always have a question of the day for you. So our question of the day today, and we hope that you'll answer this on Facebook or Twitter or wherever you choose. What milestones are you excited for your child to meet at school? So what's on your IEP list, if you already have an IEP, that you're really excited for them to meet in terms of their academic goals or while they're at school? Don't forget that in an IEP, you can put in social goals. You can put in a whole host of things because everything that your child does at school is supposed to be preparing them for life. So it's not just the pure academic stuff. It can be social goals that you can put in there. So I want to know, what are you excited? What milestone? It may just be graduating from the class that they're in. For the longest time, my son right now is sitting at a desk taking the STAR testing, and that's not something that starts here in California until the second grade. And for the longest time, after, the first big milestone was for him to go to neurotypical kindergarten, just with typical peers, and then we met that. And then as we were moving along, I wanted for him to be at the place that by the time he got to second grade, that we weren't even discussing pulling him out and going to another classroom to be able to take the test, that he would be able to sit there with everybody else and be able to perform and excel at the test with no accommodations. And that happened last year for the first time, and he's doing it again this year, and I'm really excited to hear that he's handling it well. It's a stressful time. Some of the kids who don't have diagnosed sensory issues and don't have autism find it very stressful, and he's kind of loving it. So that's a big milestone for us that I'm really happy and proud about. But I want to know from you, write into us on Facebook, and we'll have an opportunity later on today to look at what you guys are looking forward to. I think it's important to have, your goals in mind and know what it is that you're going to be excited about. We plan it, and sometimes it all works out. Not always, but what have we lost by being excited about the future? Okay, we always have a topic of the day for you, and our topic sometimes will cover an entire week, and that's certainly been the case this week. We have been talking about autism in the school and trying to filter everything through this idea of how can we set our kids up for success so that they can negotiate this really difficult, stressful place that has a whole bunch of people that we don't have control over, right? And how can we make that all work and have a recipe for success? So sometimes it seems like too tall of an order, but we do the level best that we can, right? So we're going to continue to talk about that today. And in fact, on our schedule today, we have an academic tip for you. And then later on today at 10:30, we have scheduled to have a special guest, Joe Hill, that he is a gentleman who, my understanding is that he has made this special app called AirTalk. We've been talking a lot about apps that's getting a lot of attention for how specific you can make it. So we're going to be talking with Joe about what his inspiration for AirTalk is, where you can get AirTalk, and why it's so unique and special, and why it's got the big buzz going on right now. And then, of course, at 11 o'clock, can you hear the angels sing? It's Friday at 11 o'clock. We get to welcome back to the show Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. He is the head of research and development here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and he's also involved in a new group called the Autism Research Group. We've been talking about that with him and the fact that they've put out a call to parents and want to know, there's a survey that you can do online at the autismresearchgroup.org to tell them what kind of research would mean something to you. I don't know about you, but when I see research sometime, there it is. I see research sometime and I go, really? Really? We're spending money on that? There have been 2 studies recently that came out. One that said, smoking does not increase your risks for autism. And that made me mad. I said, really? We need to study that? I mean, nobody should be smoking while they're pregnant anyway. I'm sorry, but you shouldn't be. And I think we know that for so many other reasons. So you needed to study to see if it was one more thing that you could say to somebody. And in that study, they discovered that no, it didn't appear to have any effect on whether or not a child had autism. And then this last week, another study came out that said, yes, in fact, it does increase your chances for having a child who's high functioning. Really, why are we spending money on this? There are so many other things. That's my personal opinion. And what I love is that the Autism Research Group is asking us, what would you like research done on? And, why would that be important to you? Because that's how they're going to steer their research. Do the survey, autismresearchgroup.org. And we'll have Dr. Tarbox on, and we're going to talk specifically, I don't know why I can't say that this week, specifically about some of the different research that he's been involved with and that can have an impact on what you're doing in your home. So something to look forward to at 11 o'clock. We always love having Dr. Tarbox on. And of course, there's more to be discussed. So we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back and start talking about some of these things to help us be the strongest possible team member we can be. Stick with us.
Mostly the behavior started at night, but it was invading the day, where he would just speak one syllable and babble and pace around.
When she was a year old, she lost speech. She did never seem to request me for anything, even for food. He told me over the phone that I should just put her in an institution. I was devastated. What's an institution? A hospital. Yeah, isn't that nice?
He told me that it was possible or likely that Ruffin would never be employed, that he would never work productively, that he would not know that I loved him, nor would he love me, nor would he be likely to marry.
There's a 50% chance that he won't be able to talk at all, but if he does talk, he will only be able to, make simple desire requests. I want, things like that. And probably by the time he was 10, he'd be in a home.
Doreen told me that he would recover, and Doreen told me that he would go to regular kindergarten.
I really have a very normal kid now, and lots of normal worries, but not extraordinary ones.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. And our topic this entire week has been autism in the classroom. And I want to let you know, I said at the top of the show that I'm not an expert in behavior. I'm a mom, but I'm also a former teacher. And I certainly like to speak on a regular basis about the fact that the vast majority of people who are in classrooms are people who are well-intentioned, absolutely well-intentioned. If you stop and think about it, if you're in a classroom and all the different things that you have to deal with, especially in this economy, and then on top of that, all the challenging behaviors for everyone, not just our kids on the spectrum, and the amount of pay that people get to be a teacher, it really takes people who are passionate about teaching in order for them to stay. And I believe that that is the vast majority of what our teachers are. Yes, there are exceptions to that, right? And we certainly have seen that in the news this week. And that is appalling to me. But guess what? It's appalling to all good teachers as well. And we'll talk about the case of the young boy and the things that were said to him by his teacher and his aide, and I know that there are a lot of media about that right now, about who actually was speaking on the tape, and I don't know. But I know whoever was speaking on that tape needs to be fired and never allowed to be working with children ever again. My personal opinion. However, I want to focus right now on some of the difficulties that the good teachers face in the classroom today, because I think it's essential that we give teachers, good teachers, the tools to be able to look at these challenging behaviors, focus on them, and get past them, to help a child to get past them so that they can access the curriculum. Don't we all want to get teachers back to the point where they can teach? And I have up this slide here about the chicken or the egg, which comes first? Because if you've ever been in a classroom, whether it's your child's classroom and you've gone in to help and you see somebody who is engaging in challenging behavior. Well, if you've been watching the show, you know that behavior is just communication, and that child is communicating something, right? But is it a coincidence that usually the kids who are engaged in the challenging behavior are also the kids that are behind academically? It isn't always the case, But a lot of times it is the case. And you get into this discussion of, well, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Did the child have some sort of inability to access the curriculum, and so they fell behind, and as a result of falling behind, they engaged in challenging behavior? Did it happen that way? Or did the child have challenging behavior that made it harder for them to access the curriculum and now they're behind? Which came first? And you know what? We could sit and talk about it forever, and maybe for different children it would be different things, but at the end of the day, it still leaves us with the problem. We have a child who's engaging in challenging behavior, and we have a child who is either behind or getting behind. Right? And we need to fix both of those things. As parents, as teachers, as practitioners, it's all of our problems. And I get really upset and uppity when people talk about, well, no, it's not all of our problem. It's just the problem of the parents and the teachers who have the challenging behavior. Except that if you've been in a classroom lately, then you know that there's challenging behavior in every single classroom. It doesn't mean that all these kids have autism, but challenging behavior exists in every single classroom. And we need to give teachers the tools to be able to combat that. But we also need to be able to give teachers the tools to get the children caught up. And it always seems to me that these two things get talked about as being mutually exclusive and on separate pages, when in fact they go hand in hand. We don't know which came first, but they are interrelated. So this whole idea of which came first, the chicken or the egg, I want to throw that idea out and say, let's not debate that anymore. But we know that we've got to target that challenging behavior. We've talked before on the show about the fact that we got to look at what's the function of the behavior. Is the child engaging in the challenging behavior to escape something? Then we have to go back and make whatever it is that they're trying to escape more reinforcing, right? We also have to give them a replacement behavior to ask for a break before doing that thing. If it's attention that the child, that's why they're engaging in the challenging behavior, we want to shower them with attention before they have to get to the point where they're engaging in the challenging behavior, right? If it's self-reinforcing, we want to find something that's more appropriate, that doesn't take them away from the lesson. If it's access to something, we're going to set up a circumstance where they can ask appropriately for the thing and work for it, accessing the curriculum so that they can get the thing or the person that they want, right? So we've got all these different things that we've talked about in terms of the challenging behavior, and now we're left with a child that needs to be caught up. The child is having trouble accessing the curriculum, so what do we do about that? And I think it's really difficult. By the way, I've got a graph here too for you that shows what I call the magic X. And in particular, what this graph shows is when a child is given the communication skills to be able to request the things that they want, their challenging behavior goes down. So as they're manding and their ability to have functional communication, request what they want, that's the number that's going up. And then the one that's going down is their challenging behavior. Well, we can take and apply this to a whole lot of things in terms of academics, that when we give a child the ability to do the task, right, and that goes up, then their need to engage in the challenging behavior is going to go down. So while we want to address the challenging behavior, we also have to go in and get the child caught up. But so much of the time, that's a really difficult thing. A child shows up in a classroom, and I have this slide here that says, teach this. Because the child has some skills, right? And then you get to a certain point and there's a hole. There's Swiss cheese. And a lot of times it's a frustration for a teacher because they have standards that they have to teach. There's the IEP that says these goals have to be met. But what if the child doesn't have the ability to meet that goal because there's something earlier that they missed? How do we go back in and fill in the holes so that we can create a bridge that has no holes to get to the place where they meet the curriculum? Well, as parents, you know, we need to be able to assess and see where the holes are, right? As teachers, we need to be able to assess and see where the holes are. And then we need to have lessons that are structured, that are effective at filling in gaps, right? And it sounds really simple, but where do you find that? And you guys know that I talk about skills all the time because I think that skills is a wonderful, wonderful tool. And you'll see it discussed here on the show from time to time. It's what I'm using at home with my son. But I know that as a teacher, Sometimes there's such a frustration because you see a child who's struggling and you can sit down and do an assessment with them and say, oh, okay, well, they're at a first grade reading level and they're in fifth grade. So what are we going to do about that? How are we going to bridge this gap? And then as a teacher, you got to go and figure out, okay, well, I'm trained in fifth grade. I got to find first grade worksheets. I got to find first grade lessons. I don't know what the ins and outs of teaching this, not only to a regular first grader, but a first grader who didn't get it the first time because they're having difficulty. How do you do that? Well, what's wonderful about skills is that it's all there available for you. It's all there available for you. The teaching points, the assessment to figure out what the gap skill is that's missing, all the instructions to be able to do it in a way that is really efficient and effective. So I absolutely love that. But I also want you to know that in terms of being able to look at a child in this way and to fill in those gaps, you got to do it in a really quick way. You got to make it efficient. Totally lost my train of thought, but this makes it easy. I got really excited about skills the first time I saw it because I said, this is amazing. I know what I wanted to say. They were talking, the first time I saw skills, they were talking about the fact that they'd put together this program because they used to have this huge piece of paper that they would put on the wall that listed all of the skills that a child needed to get from birth until age 9. Their 9th birthday, all the different things that needed to begin to emerge for them to be completely unencumbered by a deficit in a skill, if you will. And it was this big, huge piece of paper that they would have to stretch out around a room, and it listed all of these different skills. And thinking about that as a parent, as a teacher, and I was thinking, where would you know where to start? Like, how could you possibly know? And especially when our kids are so individual, right? There's no two pieces of Swiss cheese that are the same, right? No two snowflakes that are the same. Our kids are not the same. Their skill deficits are not the same. Even if they have the same diagnosis, their skill deficits are not the same. And so we could all sit there and look at that big piece of paper and go, oh, where do I start? And I'm going to be here the rest of my life. And I'm going to waste some time. And that if there was a way that you could say, okay, for child Johnny Walker, what he needs is skill number 354, and then he needs skill number 526, and then he needs skill 2035. And if we were to put these things into Johnny and make it possible for him to do these things and have them be reinforcing, then Johnny would be able to read. And that was so exciting to me. I have to say, as a parent, but also as a teacher, to say, wow, this computer program is smart enough that if you answer a series of questions, what it does is says, here's where the gaps are. Here's the roadmap to filling in the holes. It's a beautiful thing. And I know I get really excited about it. I now look at things differently when I'm teaching my son. I'm not in the classroom anymore, and sometimes I miss it because I get excited when somebody is learning. And I look at things for my son, and I see how he can have a part of something but be missing another part of it. And because of skills, I'm now looking at things in a different way and saying, well, I don't have to get overwhelmed by that. There's just one little part of this, and I can pull that part out, work on that separately, and then plug it back in, and woo, look at that thing go. It runs. So I think it's really important for us as parents to, if we can't get the school to do it, to identify these things for ourselves. You can, if you're seeing, oh my gosh, my child is having trouble with whatever it is. If they're having trouble with handwriting, or they're at school and they're having difficulty with adding and subtracting. You take the assessment and you see, oh, okay, my child is only understanding numbers from this one perspective. They didn't get a global perspective of it. And we need for them to understand that the letter 1 and the number 1 stands for one object. I didn't realize that before taking the assessment, but that's the gap. And then it tells you this is the lesson, here are the series of lessons. And, there's lots of different ways that you can determine where you need to start. And it kind of guides you through that and gives you a sequence that you can choose to do or choose to do differently so that you have a place to begin. The summer is coming up. And so many of you have written and said, I don't know what to do for the summer. You know, I'm worried about summer camps. We've got some shows coming up about summer camps. But you're also saying, I don't know what to do academically. And I can tell you as a teacher that what we know, I always talk to you guys about the pizza dough. You push the pizza dough out and it shrinks back, right? And we push the pizza dough out again and it goes a little bit further, but it's still going to have a little bit of shrinkage, and you keep pushing. And what we know is during the summer for all kids, I'm talking about whether they're on the spectrum, not on the spectrum, there is shrinkage. That if we don't keep up on skills, right? And it's so important for us at home to be maintaining the things that our children are working on. And I think it's a great opportunity to take some of these things where the holes are, pull out, work on it, and then push it back in and watch your child fly. I really advocate skills, especially for that reason, especially over the summer. It's a great time for you to be able to play with it and see and do the assessment and start to work on a couple of things. That's just that's what I'm doing. And I think it's a wonderful thing as a teacher and as a parent. So, because how can teachers teach this, right? It's really difficult. And we know that for a lot of places next year, the class size is going to go up exponentially. And then it just makes it that much harder to teach Swiss cheese. So let's help all of our children to be fully formed cheese, no holes. I know, my strange analogies. But in any case, you get what I'm talking about. It's a wonderful thing. We're going to take a break, and we're going to be back in just a couple of minutes. We're here today with Sarah Cho, who is the managing supervisor of the CARD Fresno office, and it's a special treat for us to have her with us today. Yeah. And we're going to be asking her to talk to us about working with children who are nonverbal. So when a child is not speaking, are we saying that they're non-vocal or non-verbal?
The correct terminology is non-vocal.
Okay.
Because when we're saying vocal means sound. So sound is being emitted.
Okay.
So verbal means that the child is able to communicate to another person that they need something, they have desires, they have wants, and a verbal response might be handing a picture.
Okay.
It might also be a sign. Might also be pressing a button to ask for something.
Okay.
Those would all be considered verbal behavior. But if they don't have speech, we might say that they're non-vocal.
Vocal.
So imagine then if you have a child who's not developing speech typically, they have no way to tell their parent what they need, you're going to see frustration levels increase. And if I don't have a way to appropriately get my point across, I'm going to start developing some really bad excessive behaviors to communicate.
Right.
So that's when we start to see the noncompliance, the tantrums, the aggression, even self-injurious behaviors emerge. We're going to use really short and concise and clear speech. Pair it with a gesture. And then when the child starts responding, immediately praise. Right. Immediately give a reward. So then that way the child is starting to understand, I got it. I'm understanding what she's wanting me to do. Mm-hmm. At the same time as working on receptive instructions, we do need to teach the child also a way for them to communicate too. Right. So we're going to start working on very basic requesting behavior. So they're able to request for things. And so the two kind of go hand in hand.
If there are no sounds, then maybe we start with signs.
You could start with signs, or you could start with an icon. As a parent, you're going to know your kid best in the sense that you're going to know kind of what they like. If you have a kiddo who likes to look at pictures, who likes to look at books, maybe an icon is going to be something that would be preferred, and they would get really good at giving it. If you have a child who is, you're like, wow, they have really great fine motor. Maybe they can already string beads. Maybe they can do a shape sorter. The ability to manipulate their hands and their fingers is pretty solid. Maybe you might want to work on some very basic signs.
Okay, so taking whatever the strength is and running with that.
Absolutely. So let's say that you do an icon or you do a sign. Both of those forms of communication have been linked to development of expressive speech. So, if that's something that we're starting with today because we need to get through today,
Right.
That doesn't mean that that's what we're going to end up doing tomorrow.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. It's time for an IEP tip. We know that this is IEP season, and on the 16th of this month, we're going to have a special education lawyer, Valerie Vanneman, is going to be with us. And if you have questions about IEPs, you can be writing them in now and getting ready for when she's here. But one of the things that we need to be aware of are what our rights are. They're going to give you a wonderful big pamphlet and ask you to sign a thing saying that you've received it. And sometimes we're a little too overwhelmed to read through all of that, although I really recommend that you do read through it. But one of the things that we're entitled to at an IEP meeting is to bring people with us. Now, usually there's a very cramped space and there's already a bunch of people represented from the school district. So I don't think, especially for the first IEP, that you want to bring your entire neighborhood, right? That's not probably going to be productive. However, you want to go in there and feel like you're going to be comfortable and that you're going to be able to listen and that you're going to be able to state your points with efficiency and stay on track, because it's possible that somebody's going to say something that has the potential to emotionally upset you and possibly even make you very angry or cry, right? That's not unusual. I have certainly heard of parents who have gotten to the point where they need to excuse themselves for a second to collect themselves, or parents who got to the meeting and somebody said something and it upset them so much that they raised their voices. We want to avoid that as much as possible. That is not going to be good for us. We've heard from all the experts that we've had in here, whether it was Dr. Mike Dorsey or Bonnie Yates, a wonderful special education attorney. They've all said not the best plan, right? That it can count against us if we end up going to due process down the road. I'm a big advocate for making sure that you have a tape recorder on the table during your IEP. You want to notify your school 48 hours in advance in writing, email is okay, that you're going to bring a tape recorder. That means they're going to bring a tape recorder too. This is great because if a mistake is made, there's going to be a record of it, right? If somebody were to say something that's inappropriate, there's going to be a record of it. Now that's wonderful, because it means that everybody should be on their best behavior. And if they're not, there's going to be a penalty for it. You just want to make sure that you're not the penalty person, right? So if you're a hothead, I still think you need to bring that tape recorder, but you need to make sure that you have somebody there with you that has some sort of a signal for dial it down. Somebody that you will actually listen to, right? I write myself notes because my husband can't always come with me to these IEP meetings. Sometimes he's there and he is the strong silent type. He sits there and he says nothing, but he'll nod very quietly, and every once in a while he'll say something that gets right to the heart of the matter, right? But I'm the mouthpiece that blah, 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 blah. I know you find that shocking, right? That I would have something to say. But there have been a couple of times that, and my husband knows, and I have said, if I start going down this path, or if I say this, or if I do this, and we have a signal, and every once in a while he'll just put his hand on mine to remind me that I am not there alone, and I am not there for myself. And this is not a game, that we are there as a family. My son isn't there, but that we're there as a family for our child, and that it's not about being right. Right? Sometimes it's hard because you want to go, really? But it's not about that. It's about getting what's appropriate for your child and staying on point. When you're going to do an interview, you get talking points, right? You can make that for yourself to know what your talking points are, because otherwise afterwards you go, oh, I forgot about that. I've said before, I drop a letter and say, here's what we want. If you don't want to do that, you can have Post-it notes that are there. You can have a notebook that's got little reminders. You have a bunch of notes on it, but a little reminder: stay calm, breathe. Remember to ask for this, whatever you need to have. But again, you can bring in guests. Now, you can bring in your mother-in-law. You can bring in, your neighbor. You can bring in another autism parent. You can bring in an advocate. And you can bring in a lawyer. And you'll get lots of different pieces of advice about when to make the move to an advocate or a lawyer. I think each case is individual, and I think you get a sense of when it's time. We call it lawyering up, right? When you need to lawyer up. And I think in the beginning, as long as you feel comfortable and you feel prepared, that it's never a bad idea to go in and see, right? Because sometimes people are incredibly reasonable, and if you're being reasonable, you can have a discussion. I hear that happens. Sometimes I'm being really facetious. That happens a lot of times for me. It didn't in the beginning, right? It didn't for me in the beginning, but it does now. And I want to be clear about that. However, there are times when you do have to draw the line. There was a wonderful thing in my local support group very recently that a mom wrote in and said she was talking about her IEP and all the things that she was going through, and it just sounded like a nightmare, you guys. Absolute nightmare, that her child was in a setting that was inappropriate. She was meeting all kinds of resistance, people who were telling her one thing and then changing their minds. I felt so bad for this mom. But everybody was writing in and telling this mom, okay, here's the next step, and make sure you do this. And one person would say, in my experience, it's important to do this. And another person would write in and say, oh, that's great, but you know what I would add to that? So she was getting advice from probably 12 different parents about, and one of them in particular was saying, make sure you keep everything in writing. Every time you have a conversation, send an email saying, as per our conversation, and how important it is to cross your T's and dot your I's. And this one parent was just like, keep it all in one place, because they got to the point where everybody agreed it's time to lawyer up. It's just too important. You're not making any headway. You have all this documentation. It seems clear that you should have this thing and it would be appropriate. And she did. She went and she lawyered up. And what she wrote later, by the way, her IEP got all solved with the first meeting with the lawyer, and she was very happy with what ended up happening for her child. But she wrote back to everybody and said, what was amazing about this was that had I gone to the lawyer on the first day, this would have cost me upwards of $5,000. But I didn't, and instead I educated myself, and you guys helped me, and I got to the point where I needed to hire the lawyer, but instead of it being $5,000, it was more like $500, and the lawyer was thrilled to come in because I had done so much of the work and I had the paper trail. Had I not had the paper trail, it would have been a $5,000 bill, but instead it was a $500 bill, and it got me what my child needed and was appropriate, and she was over the moon. So, and I just thought that was a wonderful, wonderful progression of what it can be, because in this economy where we're all strapped, to have to pay $5,000 or more to be able to get done what you need to get done is sometimes cost prohibitive, and I think that schools sometimes know that, and will push to see how serious you are. But here was the perfect example of the parent who said, I'm on the job, even if you're not. So think about whether you want an advocate, and it's great to talk to an advocate or a lawyer beforehand. Most of them give free consultations. There's nothing wrong with calling a bunch of different people to figure out if you were going to need a lawyer, who you would need, and say, here's what we're about to do, and they will give you advice. People who are in special education law are generally really nice people. They can have a big bite, and you want them to, but they're usually very giving people in terms of the consultation. And so get a bunch of people's opinion, go as far as you can, but when it's time to lawyer up, lawyer up. But do know that for that IEP, you can have whoever in attendance that you would like to. I think really important to set the tone of being reasonable and nice and asking for what is appropriate from the first meeting, but to show no signs of weakness. That's not the place where you go and cry and go, I don't know what to do, even though you're feeling that way. But that's not the place to sit there and say that and do that. You want to present that you are a parent who gets it, who knows you have rights, and that your child has rights, and that you're reasonable and you want what's appropriate, and you're going to get it, right? Without being adversarial, that you have it together. I am so careful about what I wear to an IEP, and if it's a first IEP, they advocate, and I agree with it, bringing a picture of your child for people who do, after the first one, they know your kid and they love your kid, right? But for the first one, bring in a picture. I usually bring snacks. I must admit that for this last one, I did not. I got a little lazy. But usually I bring like lemonade and cookies to make it look like I am Little Red Riding Hood and everything is going to be fine, so that when I say I am not Little Red Riding Hood, do not bring the wolf out, that we've started in a nice place. But whatever works for you, you're bringing yourself, but show your best, most together side, if it's possible. There are days when it isn't, right? In any case, it's time for us to talk about the A word. This is a wonderful documentary that's being made here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. We're following a little boy, Jack Riley, who is not yet 3 in the series where we're watching. He's at 3 in real life now, but diagnosed shortly after 2, and they had to go through a waiting period to get ABA, right? He had to be assessed and all of those things. But we're at the point in ABA where he's made tremendous progress, and yet new behaviors are cropping up. And in this particular episode, we see that Jack Riley, who's been moving along and working on his functional communication skills, has reached a point where, for whatever reason, he thinks that biting might be a more efficient way of getting what he wants. Right? Nobody wants that. So they're working on biting with Jack Riley. They're showing him that he can have replacement behaviors instead of biting, and take a look at the difference between how mom deals with it and how dad deals with it, because this is the two sides of the coin that we're always going to be on ourselves, right? Mom has already said, okay, I know that this behavior is not good, but I know that there's a way that we can combat this with ABA, and that we're going to be able to get it back under control, and let's do that as quickly as possible. And dad is in the emotion of, oh my gosh, why is this happening? And I don't want this to happen. This is going to really trip us up. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. You guys have been helping me, but I'm lost. That's going to happen to all of us at some point. It still happens to me sometimes. I'm so lucky because I work here and I can come in and go, okay, this happened. What should I have done? Right? Well, you guys have that opportunity too, because you can always write in and ask me, and I'll ask on your behalf. But in any case, let's check out Jack Riley, the A word, and biting.
Put your shirt on.
Oh, really? Whoa, whoa.
Oh, really? Oh, really?
Oh, really?
Oh.
So I got an email from Miriam saying...
Jessica received an email from the other therapist that Jack Riley has been attempting to bite them. So she's checking in with Mike and Cheryl to see what's going on.
Has he tried to bite you guys?
He bit me.
He got hurt.
On Tuesday morning. He bit me good.
Was it just out of...
Oh, it was aggression.
Was there a consequence?
I snapped at him and he cried.
Kind of unexpected too.
Yeah.
And he doesn't bite out of aggression.
Yeah.
He never did that before.
It's this sort of this week. No new.
Yeah, the girls have been telling me like just about every session he's
Yeah, Mary, we tried to bite her hand because he didn't want to walk.
Yeah.
And so we took him out again yesterday. And it didn't start out well, but I think it ended up okay. Which his reward was if he would walk to the count of 20, he could jump with mommy and daddy. We would have him jump. And that seemed to be enough of a reward for him to try to keep going without going limp or trying to fight.
5 jumps and then take 20 steps.
So would it be okay if we went for a walk about like 9:30?
No.
Okay, 9:45.
I'm just kidding.
Hey, what's your name? And how old are you?
2.
When's your birthday?
I said
Oh, cool. That's soon. Are you worried about the biting?
A little bit. Because I know a lot of our kids do it to get a reaction or do it just, out of protest that they don't want to do something. I just don't want it to become an issue and become a behavior where he'll generalize it to everybody else, his family, therapists. So far, it doesn't sound like it's been happening a lot. I just wanted to do it today just to see what the antecedent is and why he's doing it. Is it because he wants an extra minute of play, or he doesn't want to, transition from outside inside yet? Just to see what's actually going on.
No,
Stop. Stay with mommy though. Nope. Hold my hand. Stay with mommy first. Hold my hand.
No, settle, dude.
You want to go to count to 20? Should we count to 20? And then you get Little Mermaid, or do you want to play? Okay, count to 20. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 19, 20! Yay! Don't come back. Come here. We'll walk. Yay! Let's walk. Stand up. Oops. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. The biting.
What do you want?
No.
Hello, tantrum.
Stand up.
What do you want? Tell me. I want. Okay, then let's walk for 20 steps
20
and then you
steps,
can
and then
get
you can
mermaid.
have her.
Okay, let's
Ready?
go.
Usually I just let him go free because he's been in therapy all day. So that's part of he expects to be able to just run.
I would suggest just to get his compliance under control first. You give him an instruction, he complies, you give him his little freedom. Because I know he wants to run around. Give him words to use, like, give me 1 more minute, or, I want more grass.
Yeah. Jack,
What's calling you?
come here. Come here.
Oh, good boy! There you go!
Good job, buddy.
Now what do you want? You want pancakes?
Mermaid.
Daddy's
Mermaid.
got mermaid.
Hey, Jack, here's the mermaid.
She's gonna tickle you. She's gonna kiss you.
I don't want him to feel it every time he's out there. Yeah, he has to have a fight with you guys.
And quite frankly, I had no idea how to combat it the last couple of days. I thought, okay, I'll just pick him up and take him in because I had no idea what to do. And today he had a good time. I think he got out some energy.
Well, if you guys can establish or be consistent about the rules outside, like, when I ask you to come here, you gotta come here.
I mean, if he's just not behaving, if he's not doing anything we ask, is it okay to pick him up and say, okay, we're going in? I don't know what to do. I mean, I get so frustrated. I think, well, the only option I have is, we're going in, and he won't go in with me, so I pick him up. I can't do it when he's 10, of course. Now it's like his main weapon is to just lay down.
My suggestion would be to ask him to come here, but just, give him hugs or say what's up, and then have him run again.
Right.
So that when you finally do give him the instruction, he's not, too upset about it.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when you ask him to come here, he'll put up a fight because he knows that means I gotta go now.
So if every now and then he comes here and just
Gives you a hug, gives you a kiss.
gets to be free, then it won't be such a bad association.
Yes.
It was a nice experience. And,
Good.
the last couple times have been seriously to where I didn't even want to take him outside again. Just so traumatic.
You want the Little Mermaid?
Little
You
mermaids?
should go. Oh, here you go.
Little mermaids. Yep.
Sit down.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, go show Suzanne
Oh
Little
my
Mermaid.
goodness, yeah.
Yeah, you are wearing a shirt.
I'll go right back.
You'll be right back.
I'll be-
Be right back.
Okay, that's too fun.
Wonderful opportunity to view ABA therapy inside a family, to see that it has an effect, that the child starts to progress, but that there are elements of it that are going to be frustrating. For those of you who are around the world who are literally waiting for ABA to start, and you see the benefits of it and you see how much this child has progressed, I know sometimes it's hard to watch when people are struggling with something that you wish you had the benefit of, right? But I want you to know that as we sort things out in the world and make it possible for you to have ABA, and that is we're all trying to work on that. And I want to hear from you in particular about what you think your biggest obstacle is to getting ABA, because I want to be working on that with you. Whether it's funding or whether it's that your job, whatever it is that's holding you back, let me know. But when you do start, and it's a wonderful thing, I refer to it as the autism miracle in my living room, right? There are elements of it that are hard to deal with. Your life changes. It becomes this thing that is the focus. It's like boot camp for years. We did 5 years of ABA. It wasn't all intensive. I don't mean to make it sound like that, because, we were only 40 hours the first year, and then maybe 35 the second year, and then down to 30 for the third year. And then we were in the 20s. And then the last year, it was mostly between 12 and 8 hours a week, right? But it's another full-time job that you have to show up for and research and learn new skills, and there are people in your house, and your life is, in some respects, not your own. It is frustrating, and I want you to know that, and I want you to know it's worth it. And even these parents in their frustration are like, well, this is really worth it. But you get tired sometimes. I talk to you guys all the time about managing your stress, and that this is a marathon. It is not a sprint. And that you're going to have your ups and your downs. You go 2 steps forward, you go 1 step back, and then you go 18 steps forward, and then you go 12 back, and you go, right? But it's that pizza dough that you keep pushing, and no matter where you go, even when you take steps back, you never get back to the beginning. Can I tell you that took me probably 3 years to really grasp, especially because my son had the regressive kind of autism, that I constantly lived in fear that anytime, because we lost skills, and I felt like we lost skills and I didn't yell loud enough. So there was my guilt, right? If I had said something sooner, how much more therapy would we have gotten? How much earlier could we have started? We all drive ourselves a little batty with that kind of stuff, right? And we gotta acknowledge it and then move on. Admit it and go, and move on, because it doesn't help us now. But I would sit there and think, since when he started to lose his language, I didn't yell loud enough for people to listen to me. I didn't shake people and go, no, I'm not crazy. He's losing skills here. I felt like anytime he lost a skill, I needed to sound the alarm and call everyone and say, we have a problem, it's terrible, it's horrible, it's the end of the world. And they would all say to me, yep, we know that this skill is not maintained yet. It's all right. We're on top of it. Everything's going to be okay. And I would still be in full-on panic mode. It took me a good 3 years to stop that. Poor Sabrina Tuma, who would take my phone calls at all hours of the day at night and say to me, yep, it's okay. This happens and it'll be okay. He's not going to regress to the point where he's not speaking again. And she got to the point where, because at some point she said to me, what's the fear? I hear fear. Why are you afraid? Your child's making so much progress. What are you so afraid about? And I said, I'm afraid that we're going to go back to where he had been speaking in sentences. And he's speaking in sentences again. How do I know we can't go back there? And she said to me, we're never going to let that happen. That's not going to happen. So then we would be in that space and she would just say to me, Shannon, this is not him regressing. This is not what you're afraid of. Oh, okay. 3 years before I really, really accepted that. So if you can get there before me, you're doing better than me, and I'm sure that you can. I like to think of worrying as being my hobby and my occupation and my prerogative to worry about everything. It does no one any good, though. I have to admit that. In any case, we see Dad experiencing that, right? That he goes, we've been doing so good, and now this. And now this. Why is this happening? And the frustration and the fear and the anger and the fear. Did I mention the fear? because we'd like to think, oh, well, once we've put these things in place, that everything's going to be smooth sailing, except that we've left out the fact that the child still has to grow. As you're catching the child up, guess what? You can catch the child up and the child still grows. So for people who their child did so well and they got to the point where there were no challenging behaviors and they went, woohoo, we're done, and then their children still became teenagers with all the things that come with being teenagers, right? Well, same thing for the little kids that, there's progress, right? And the child is clipping along and now the child wants to assert themselves. This is kind of typical behavior. He's not yet 3. And 3-year-olds, that they throw tantrums, and 3-year-olds will occasionally bite to get their way. What we want to know is that we don't want to have that continue. So they're already working on saying, well, Jack Riley wants more grass time. So we have to teach him how to say more grass, or just a minute, or a minute please, or whatever it is that they decide to teach him for when he wants to play on the grass. And mom is learning how not to give attention to the tantrum. That he goes to bite her, she blocks the bite so that he cannot bite her. She knows, because she's thought it through. Sometimes we don't do this on our own, but she's thought it through and said, okay, we're going outside. The likelihood that I'm going to get bit has gone up. So I got to stay spatially aware and be aware that, the arm that's holding him is at risk. And she's ready. I know, we'd like to just take a walk and not have to think about it, but sometimes that's not going to be our day. And we'd rather have it not be our day and be thinking about it than be bit, right? So she's ready, she blocks the bite, waits, distracts him and says, do you want to walk the 20 steps? Something we know he already wants to do, and the tantrum is head off at the pass. It's a perfect example of how to do it right. And the dad's in the background, and it's the perfect example of what we've done in the past that didn't work. Dad's back there in fear, in the emotion, saying, there it is, there it is. What are we going to do? The sky is falling, right? That's how it felt to me when those kinds of things would happen. I would, oh, the sky is falling. This is the worst possible thing that could happen. And I love this dad because he has a sense of humor and he's willing to be there and say what he's feeling in the moment, and it gives us permission to go, oh yes, I have been there too. I have been there too, and to have the strength to say, but look, it's not working for him. And he gets that too. He gets it, we'll see later on. But for us to be able to look at him and do it and see it in him, it's much easier to see it in somebody else, right? Than it is for us. Even last night, I went to help a friend and got home really late with my son and needed to get him in bed so he could be there for the STAR testing. And I'd been incredibly patient with somebody else's children, right? But by the time we got home and my son was not complying, and I was like, why aren't you complying, right? And it literally said that to him, because that's so useful, because that's so helpful. And then I caught myself and went, okay, wait a second. I gotta find something to reinforce here and get us back on track. And I literally had to think through that process, because it still does not automatically come to me all of the time. But I literally had to be in my living room going, why are you doing this? Why aren't you complying? We talked about this in the car. Right? I found something to reinforce, asked him to do something that I knew he already wanted to do, praised him for it. And so we had a lovey-dovey moment, and I said, let's race to get upstairs to see how quick we can get you in bed. And offered him, that if he got in bed that he was going to have more time to read and that I was going to sing to him, and, which for him is really reinforcing it wouldn't be to anybody else on the planet, right? But getting it back on track. So please know that this wonderful dad who's not doing his best in this moment gives us permission to go, and I'm going to do the same thing. But it doesn't work. So when I recognize it, I'm going to move. Please watch these episodes, The A Word, and get whatever you need from them, whether it's that you need to see what ABA is going to look like in your home and how you need to set up your home so that it was going to work for you, whether it's you need to hear these parents talk about the real feelings and the real frustrations that they have and the real joy that they're having from seeing their child blossom, whether you're doing ABA at home yourself and you need to see tips of seeing somebody deliver it in a really quality way, and you can watch Jessica do this, or whether you just need the hope of seeing that this little boy in this period of time is starting to talk in sentences. It's all there for you, folks. And if you have questions about something that you see on the A word, write in, because we know the people that are making it. Okay, but I love it. I so wish that I had had this, especially in the period of time where I was waiting for ABA to start. I, kept thinking to myself, well, I don't know quite, I don't know which room to have this in. I don't know what it's going to look like. What am I going to be able to do in the other room? I need to be able to stay at home and work, and was changing careers. And I was like, what's it going to allow for? What's it not going to allow for? This would have been so helpful to me, but I hope that it's helpful to you now, so please use it. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to address viewer responses to the question of the day today, and then at 10:30, we are scheduled to have Joe Hill from AirTalk. He's the founder of AirTalk and has created this new app, and can't wait to talk to him about what his inspiration was and what is so special and unique about this app. So stick with us. We're going to be back in just a few minutes.
Skills is a revolutionary web-based program that incorporates comprehensive assessment, curriculum design, progress tracking, and treatment evaluation for children with autism all in one place. Developed by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. Our approach is based on over 40 years of research on the principles of learning and their application to improving the lives of children with autism. How does Skills work? Created with speed and simplicity in mind, Skills was modeled on an easy 3-step process. Step 1. Start assessment. Step 1 begins with our intelligent assessment system, which consists of a series of questions. This assessment is essential to identifying your child's level of skills compared to their typical peers across all areas of development. This includes assessing social, motor, language, adaptive, play, cognition, executive functions, and academic skills. Every skill has an assigned age which indicates when the skill emerges during typical development. This means that each child is automatically presented only with lessons that are relevant to his or her age. Step 2. Choosing activities. It's now easier than ever to build an individualized treatment plan. In Step 2, you are presented with an individualized pool of activities that are directly linked to your student's assessment results. Each activity represents a specific skill that has been indicated by the assessment as needing to be taught. Activities are categorized by curriculum and then by lesson. There are 3 main types of skills: building blocks, fundamental, and expansion skills. Fundamental skills are necessary for successful everyday functioning. Building blocks are prerequisites to a fundamental skill. Expansion skills are non-essential skills, but may provide further enrichment in certain areas. After reviewing the activities available to you, you can quickly add your chosen activities to the treatment plan by simply checking the box and clicking the button. Step 3. Start treatment. Once you have selected and added the activities you want, you are ready to begin teaching. Skills provides you with all the tools necessary to design and manage an effective curriculum plan, such as printable activity guides that are customizable by the teacher, supplemental teaching aids including printable data sheets, teaching guides, visual aids, worksheets, and tracking forms, detailed IEP goals and benchmarks for each activity, brief and visually appealing video tutorials, a variety of treatment progress and clinical timeline charts, and lots more. And since Skills is completely web-based, everything you need is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in one easy-to-access location. Skills users even benefit from unlimited access to a support community, where they can ask questions and share ideas with a skills expert. Skills is always with you.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're right now answering the question of the day, which was, what milestone are you excited for your child to meet at school? And had several responses here. I love this one, to recognize and spell his name. Isn't that a wonderful thing? And you know what's so great is when we put these things down someplace for everybody to see, I think it reminds us all how important the work that everybody is doing is, that how amazing that is to recognize and spell his name. Another person saying, being more social, just wish the school would get a clue. They are so not helping. Grr, we need an overhaul of the system. I don't understand the other word in there. But you know what? We can write those social goals into the IEP. And that's a really wonderful thing to do, because once they're into the IEP, and if you have the tape recorder working, you say, oh, I'd like to add these goals because during lunchtime I want to work on these social goals. And then if they have to have a reason why not to add them, right? And the tape recorder is whirring, remember? So that if you say, here's a reasonable goal for where my child is, it's part of FAPE that you have to be preparing them for the real world, and part of that is the social, right? So here are the goals that I'd like to write in for lunchtime and during the class, and then suddenly they have to work on it, because if they don't, they're not in compliance. So don't be afraid to add those social goals on there. Another person who writes, my son was so scared to begin ice skating. I wonder if this is the same mom that wrote earlier this week about we asked you, what do you like about what your school's programs are? And somebody wrote in about ice skating. I just thought that was amazing. But I wonder if it's the same mom, or there's just many of you out there that have ice skating as part of your curriculum. I think it's awesome. But she writes, my son was so scared to begin ice skating. He did not want to go to school this day, but he succeeded going to ice skating. It was one important step for him to pass. How wonderful. Anytime our children can overcome a fear of the unknown, it's a really exciting day, isn't it? Okay, another person who says, since my son has entered a specific program that I'm not familiar with, it's called NEST in New York, he goes out of his way now to say hi and bye to his classmates. So happy and proud. Love that. Another person writing that the milestone that they're looking forward to achieving in school is to talk. Yes, fabulous. Another person says potty training. It's a great one. Okay, another person says to pass to audition to get into the school for the performing arts. Love that. I don't know how we're going to get him to comply with all the requirements. He's so talented, but only when he wants to draw, and only when he wants to draw. Only what he wants to draw and when he wants to draw. Well, you know what? We all struggle with that a little bit, right? That sometimes we can be incredibly productive, but we're not always in the mood to be that productive. But what you can work on at home is setting up circumstances and having some antecedent things that trigger wanting him to draw, that make it reinforcing for him, that you can have some external thing that helps him to get down to the drawing. That and think about all the things in our life that are this way, that we have things to kind of warm up to do something that make it help us to switch into the mode where we're going to do that thing. Like if we were just going to go dance, and and let's say we enjoy dancing, because some people don't, but we enjoy dancing, but people don't usually go out on the dance floor and just start to boogie it up right away, right? They have to warm it up a little bit. So finding what the appropriate warm up is so that your child wants to draw, and then making it shorter and shorter and shorter so that very quickly he can get into the mindset of wanting to draw, would be a really interesting thing to kind of look at. Another person who says to follow social cues and succeed in a class of typically functioning kids her age. We have done special education for 2 years where my daughter has made me so proud. Now we see what the next phase brings. Good luck, everybody, and stay positive. Love, love, love that. Our child's placement determines a lot of different things, right? And some of our kids are completely included, some of them are in special day class, and some of them are in a hybrid where part of the day they're in special day and part of the day they're completely included, or included to a certain extent. And I think, we are guaranteed that our child get offered the least restrictive environment that they can handle, right? So, and I don't know very many parents who don't long for their child to be fully included. And how do we get there? How do we get to full inclusion? Well, a big part of why children are excluded from inclusion and left in special day has nothing to do with ability truly to access curriculum, right? A lot of times it has to do with challenging behavior. And so if we target challenging behavior, and sometimes that can be as simple as following social cues, right? It doesn't have to be big, explosive, violent behavior, but failure to follow social cues, having to be constantly prompted to follow social cues. But again, that's one of those components that we can pull out and work on at home, and take out into the community and work on, and maybe then have them participate in a class. Social classes, social skills classes, really good for these kinds of things if there's something like that in your community. Skills has a whole area on social cues and social rules that could be really beneficial. And targeting that specific thing. We were talking earlier about the Swiss cheese, that sometimes there's holes in our child's ability that prevent them from doing something that they would otherwise be able to do. And it's just one little aspect of something that can hold them back. But when you plug that hole up with a skill, suddenly your children can take off. So I have great hope that your daughter is going to do really well and be able to be fully included. And if you want some more information about some of those lessons about social cues, please make sure that you write into us. Okay, I was going to read some more, and there are more to read, but we have to take a little bit of a break, because when we come back at 10:30, right on the mark, we're going to be joined by a special guest, Joe Hill, who is the founder of AirTalk, and recently his app was featured in TechCrunch. We're going to be talking to him about what AirTalk is, how he was inspired to create AirTalk, and why it's getting so much buzz, and why you might be interested in taking a look at this revolutionary new app. So stick with us. We're going to be back with Joe Hill in just a minute.
I'm Adele Nadowski, Director and Co-Creator of Skills. CARD e-learning is an online tool that has been developed by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. CARD e-learning is the training that is delivered to the ABA therapists at CARD to train them on the principles of applied behavior analysis and to equip them with the knowledge they need to essentially deliver the ABA-based techniques during their therapy with the children that they work with. ABA has been proven scientifically to be the most effective intervention for children with autism. At this point, even the Surgeon General has come out with a statement suggesting just that. So we know that this is something that children with autism definitely need if they're going to improve and live the lives that we're hoping that they're going to be able to live. By being able to train people on this one particular method that we know works, and to be able to have all of your staff within your school settings on the same page, it allows you to take more of a multidisciplinary approach, and there's definite consistency going on within the team. It makes sure that every person involved with that child's treatment program, including the speech and language pathologist, the occupational therapist, the teachers, the aides, all of these individuals to be able to be trained so that they can all work together effectively with the child. Parents that are using CARD e-learning can use it either to train themselves, and then after having done that, they can implement different techniques with their child in order to teach new skills. But oftentimes parents might also be working either with an ABA provider, with a school, or they may have even hired their own therapist to deliver the intervention techniques. So CARD e-learning can be used either to collaborate with your school. It can also be used to train the therapists that are coming to the home of the parents, or it can also be shared with the ABA provider so that that provider can find out about it and perhaps implement it within their organization and train their staff. You can also do reporting for your organization. So you can actually look and find out which teachers are progressing, what their quiz scores are, and actually we can give you reports as well that will help you to compare the different teachers and their performances. CARD e-learning is really, really simple to use. You can log on to this as long as you have a computer, that's all you need, and an internet connection. And you can work on it any time of the day, anywhere that you're at. When you log on, you realize that right away. First of all, on the top of the page, there's a navigational tutorial. It's a how to use this page button. Simply by watching that video, it'll all kind of unfold in front of you, and it becomes extremely self-explanatory. CARD e-learning has 9 modules, and you can basically go through those at your own pace. You're going to be watching videos that are kind of like a storyboard with narration, but in addition to that, there's many different video clips of therapists actually implementing the techniques that are being described within the storyboard that you can also watch. And then of course you're able to pause, you're able to type notes right directly underneath the video that you're watching. You can save your notes, you can review them, and between each module you do take a quiz, and once you pass that quiz you can go on to the next module. And then after you complete all of them, you have a final exam. And by completing the final exam and passing with a score of 85% or better, you will be given a certificate of completion. Let me show you how easy it is to use CARD e-learning.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. And I'm really thrilled right now because we have a special guest who's going to be joining us via Skype. His name is Joe Hill. He is the founder of AirTalk. And we've wanted to get him on the show now for a couple of weeks because he has made an app called AirTalk that's getting quite a bit of buzz. It was recently featured in TechCrunch. And I want him to tell us what AirTalk is all about. So, Joe, are you with us?
I am with you.
There you are. So nice to meet you in this way, Joe. And you are an autism dad, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
And you have 2 children that are on the spectrum. So we love to talk to dads because we don't get to talk to dads often enough. So welcome to Autism Live. And tell us a little bit about what exactly AirTalk is.
Well, when I first started this whole journey of wanting to create an app, I was a financial planner, and I was dealing with families just like mine, families who were cash-strapped and in need of good tools, and the more and more I was sitting down and talking with them, and they were talking to me about all these augmented communication devices that were costing $5,000 and $10,000. I was just looking at that going, well, that's just way too expensive. Why not get an iPad? And they were saying, well, there's not too many good iPad apps out there. And sure enough, they were right. There was a lot of apps that cost like $200 or $300 that were tough to use and kind of clunky, and I just wasn't really happy with what I saw. I'm a big fan of design. So I decided to create AirTalk. which families can basically just take their iPad and take pictures of whatever they want to, or they can download pictures and create flashcards. And when they create the new card with the picture, they type in a caption and they can record their voice into the iPad, so that whenever the child touches the picture that they see, they hear their parent's voice come out of the iPad. And the picture travels to the bottom of the screen, and they can then make customized sentences. So they not only are learning new words, but also how to use them in a sentence. So pick up the blocks, please, or may I have juice, please, or just whatever they want to do, they can do, and do it very easily. And because my sons would stand in the middle of the kitchen and scream, and I didn't know what they wanted. So I thought it would be cool to have an iPad and just be able to turn on an app and just say, what do you want? And they can point or select what they want, because it's just that they recognize and a voice that they recognize to make things easy.
Well, it's brilliant, Joe, and I have to say that being able to customize it so it's the parent's voice and that they can take a picture of the actual thing is so exciting. We had an expert on yesterday talking about functional communication skills, Sue Cho, and she was showing a different app that didn't have these features, and she was talking about the fact that so much of the time, it's an emotional thing for parents that they think, oh, if we start to go with an assisted technology device, that our children won't speak. When in fact, the studies have shown quite the opposite. That those kids are more likely to speak, that they're more likely to have a decrease in those challenging behaviors, like you were saying, standing in the kitchen and screaming, because they don't have a way of telling us. And that one of the pluses of when it speaks is that the children actually acquire language in a quicker rate when they do find their voices, because they've had it consistently given to them. And for you to have a capability for us to put our own voices on it, I just think it's brilliant. So congratulations.
Well, I appreciate that. I think I'm really excited about it. It's it's much different than my original idea, in that it looks a whole lot better. Well,
what was your original idea?
Well, I mean, I wanted to do so much. I had like 5 or 6 features that I wanted to put in there, and my development team here in Norfolk, called We Are Titans, I threw all these ideas out at them, and they just said, yeah, that's going to cost a lot of money.
Oh, okay.
I was like, well, maybe we can add them as we go. But the simplistic nature of the app itself is really one of the highlights that I like about it. When it comes to customizing other apps, there's other apps out there where you might be able to record your voice, but if you can, I haven't found them. I haven't been able to find that feature in them either. And you have to be able to use it in order for it to work. Otherwise, I'm going to get bored and walk away.
Absolutely.
So.
Well, and to be able to pair all of that, to be able to take a picture of the actual item, because so often when we're making flashcards, and we know that our kids can tend to be very inflexible and very literal in the beginning, and if we're taking an actual picture of the actual thing and putting our voice with it, I just think it's more reinforcing, which we know is important. So Joe, talk to us about where can we get this app?
So you can, it's available on the iTunes store. It's for the iPad only at this point.
Okay.
You can go to airtalk.com. That's AEIRTALK.com. And it will give a little description of the app. But also there's a big green button at the bottom of the screen that says buy it here, and you can click on it, and you should be able to take them right to the iTunes store where it can be purchased.
And what is the cost currently for AirTalk?
The cost is $2 right now.
As opposed to some of these other programs that you can't do these things with that are $150 and $250.
Yeah, well, when we originally launched, we were in the $40 price range. But we just found that well, actually, I had to be honest with myself and just said, if I'm scrolling through apps and I'm looking at them, if I see a $40 app, I'm going to skip over it real fast, just because it's just not in my budget. And I really wanted something that was in people's budgets. And I think a $2 app for that anyone can use, not only with children with special needs, but just children, normally developing children in general, would be able to use it and learn from it. And that's what this app is. It's a gift to be able to have it be made and launch. So I figured, it should be a gift for a lot of people. And, we don't want to ask it too high of a price point. I think $2 is pretty reasonable for it.
Joe, you're my hero. Who better to do something than this than a dad who's actually going to use it with their child? And the fact that you've made it affordable for everybody, really, you are an autism hero. I'm verklempt here. I'm emotional about it because that's a wonderful thing that you're doing. Are you working to have it available on Android markets and for Microsoft?
Right now, I think our focus is going to be on iPhone and Android. Okay. Android is going to be a lot more work for us, though. So we're not expecting that for at least another year or two, just because the amount of capital we have to raise to get it built on that platform is pretty significant.
Yeah.
That and Android has, when you're dealing with, so I'm going to give you a little insight into app development here.
Okay.
When it comes to an iPad, it only has one screen size. It's the iPad. It has the same screen size. When it comes to Android, though, you're dealing with 5 or 6 different companies making different size screens. So you have to program for that. And so pixel density is a big thing. So if you say, well, this thing has a 9-inch screen and the other one has a 7-inch screen, each one has to be uniquely programmed.
Okay.
So, or at least the app has to be programmed to recognize those screen sizes. So it's a lot more. So it's kind of interesting. So it takes a little bit of time to develop for Android. And so we're just trying to reach as many people as we can initially. And the iPad and iPhone have, in the app world, 93% market share. It means like 93% of all apps are bought on those devices.
Right.
So, and the rest are on Android. But as you know, the special needs community loves Android because it's affordable. Yeah. And I'm very sensitive to that, and I want that to happen. But right now we just have to focus on what we have going on. And
Absolutely. Absolutely. And are you thinking of making more apps that address different things? Have you got more stuff in the works?
Not in the works necessarily. I think AirTalk is kind of a unique platform. So I've been getting a lot of feedback from the professional speech pathology community. Yeah. And, I'd really love to have a more advanced version of it. Maybe it's slightly more expensive for professionals and teachers. So these guys are time strapped. They go from patient to patient to patient. Yeah. So I really want something that they don't have to customize every single time. Right. And potentially, even for parents now, make card packs available. So if you want to teach your child, say, French or German or whatever, you have a card pack of 50 cards and make it available for $1, or 50 animals or 50 verbs or whatever.
I think that's awesome.
So that's a lot of stuff to get done, but that's sort of what we're focusing on for the next couple of years, and after that, who knows where. I have a few other ideas, but they're all on the back burner, and I'm love that I'm part of the app community now, and that it's been a dream of mine to be into tech. My degree's in theology, so for me to go all the way over here, it's been kind of a long, winding journey. But it's still fun, and to be on TechCrunch and to reach that and to trend #1 on TechCrunch for a day and a half, the story is really reaching a lot of people and they really love it, and I think that's because it's an app for a purpose, and it's not just a silly noise-making app, even though I have some of those. Nothing wrong with them. I just think that it's just kind of fun to be part of an app that's really touching and reaching people. So it's kind of humbling.
How exciting was it in your house? Like, did you know that it was going to come out in TechCrunch? Were you prepared ahead of time, or was it a big surprise?
No, it was a big surprise. We had TechCrunch visit Norfolk, Virginia, where I'm at here, and we have our own little. We have our own little tech community that's building here in the last year or so. A lot of startups are starting to form, and we're really excited to see that happening. So TechCrunch is going to be coming down to visit DC and Richmond, and they said, well, where else should we go? And a ton of people just wrote them on Facebook and said, come to Norfolk. And so we had a meetup of about 150 people with the lead editor from New York, John Biggs, and Jordan Crook, who is one of the mobile writers there. And they came down, and we all, everybody was it's like a big party. And we all just networked and everything. And I showed John my app. I said, if you have a few seconds, I just want to, sort of pick your brain about it. And he said, okay. And we went and sat down, and I showed it to him, just gave him a 30-second pitch and told him what it did and why I made it and how it can help a lot of people. And he said, "That's great. Just send me anything that you have on it." I said, "Okay." So I sent him some links of some stories we had done on it before, and didn't hear anything back for a few days. And then I'm in my house washing dishes in the morning, and I get a tweet that says, "Hey, congratulations on the TechCrunch write-up." I'm like, "What TechCrunch write-up?" So I immediately run to my computer with wet hands, which is probably not smart, and dry my hands off, on my jeans and stuff, and get online, and I see it, and immediately just blast it out there, and just started thanking everyone who had made a comment. And we had we're right now we're over 2,000 likes on Facebook for that one story.
That's amazing.
And they're still getting feedback, which I love, and it's crazy, and it kind of feels like kind of a buoyancy. Because when I was making this app all of last year, I was scrubbing floors at a warehouse in the morning. At night, I'd work at a hotel, carry bags around for the customers there while this was being built, and trying to network and make that happen at the same time. So there are times when you're going through that going, am I crazy for building this? And then when you have an opportunity like TechCrunch to get a write-up like that, you see, oh, yeah, that's why I was crazy enough to start this whole thing.
Crazy smart.
And
Crazy smart.
Make my credit score go way, way down, so it works out though.
Well, I got to tell you, I love that whole story, but can I tell you what really caught my attention? That you were doing dishes. So let me see here, Joe. You're a smart guy. You're a really good dad. You're a smart businessman, and you do dishes. Okay, seriously, you're superhero status now. A dad who does dishes. Pretty amazing. That's wonderful. Tell us just briefly about your boys, because they were what inspired this, right?
Right, absolutely. Well, I have two boys, Deacon and Gunner, and
love those names.
And Deacon, I never had to deal with anything like this when I was growing up. I didn't have any relatives who had special needs. You see that a lot. People I talk to, they have a cousin or a nephew or an uncle or something like that. Yeah. And I had never dealt with anything like that, so I didn't know what to be looking for developmentally. And my son just wasn't talking. He was kind of slow to walk. He was he just would be in his own little world. He was a quiet dude, pretty happy, pretty laid back. And for me, I'm like, I have the best son in the world, and and I did. But then after about 30 months, we said there's something up, and we have a really good community here medically. There was a head of pediatrics at CHKD, Children's Hospital King's Daughters in Norfolk, Virginia, and he has a teenage son who's on the spectrum. And so we went and we took Deacon there and said, we don't understand what's going on. And he said, well, you need to go see this person. And so we went to a couple of different people, and eventually we got the diagnosis, probably around the time he was 3 years of age, and immediately launched into just physical therapy and occupational therapy and speech therapy and all of those good things. And because his brother is so close to him, Gunner, we knew exactly what to look for, the toe walk, not talk, things like that. So they're wonderful kids. They both love music. They laugh and giggle all the time. They like to jump on my back whenever I'm they're like any other boy. It's just, there's just that uniqueness about them, and that's what makes them special. So we and for me, I see other families who are struggling with, why isn't my son, especially other men, why isn't my son achieving these things? Why isn't he making his milestones? And for me, I'm more laid back in the sense of more practical. Like, I don't have any expectations for my sons. I really do not. I'd much rather them be happy, and even if they don't graduate college, be able to travel the world with me if that's what it comes down to. Hey son, you're 22 years old. You want to go on a cruise with me? I don't. I guess that's my perspective on it. Other parents might have a different perspective, but for me, I don't have those high expectations or too low of expectations. I want them to be happy.
Wonderful.
And so I wanted a life for them that was going to facilitate that. And that's why I became a financial planner. And when I was quickly failing at that, it's one of the reasons why I wanted to go into be an app to take care of my kids. Not only to teach them, but to take care of them as well. And I think we're on that road. Who knows? But I just didn't want to be one of those families that sits down and mopes all the time or complains on Facebook about how bad their life is. I just want to just be like, no, anyone can do that. Anyone can sit around and complain, but it really takes a lot to just pick yourself up and do something about it, even if it's hard. And it is hard. It's a lot harder to do that than to complain. So that's just.
Joe, I think you're amazing. I think your app is amazing. We certainly want to get the word out to people. So again, they can go to the iTunes store and get it. And they can go to your website, which we've been flashing up from time to time and we'll put up again. And for $2 to have access to this app and to be supporting this dad, and helping him to make his children's dreams come true, I think that's something we can all get behind. And I just want to thank you. We're pretty much out of time, but I want to thank you for being, because I know you've been really busy with everything else that you have going on, but I want to thank you for being here, and I hope you'll come back again.
Oh yeah, have me on anytime.
Okay.
I'll yammer at your face all day long. I promise.
Well, we love that, and I literally could talk with you all day long. But I got a doctor coming in a few minutes to interview. But thank you so much, and please give your best to your family. And we hope we're going to further your message and hope that even more people can find this wonderful app, Air Talk.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe.
We're also on Facebook too, by the way.
Okay, so people can go there and give you a like and find out more information there as well.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. Joe, thank you so much. Give your kids a hug from us.
I will.
And we'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. What a wonderful dad. And he does dishes. Isn't it funny? He's telling this wonderful story, and I think it's just so great. But the whole thing about, when he does dishes as well, man, that really caught my attention. My husband does dishes too, I have to say. Nothing better than a man who does dishes. In any case, we're going to take a little bit of a break. We're going to come back, and at the top of the hour, I think we're going to come back for one more segment. But at the top of the hour, don't forget, we're having Dr. Jonathan Tarbox come in, and I love Fridays at 11 o'clock when Dr. Tarbox comes in and joins us. So stick with us. We're going to be back in just a couple of minutes. I'm here today with Sarah Cho, who is the managing supervisor of CARD Fresno. And she's a wonderful resource. And today we're going to be talking with her about using assisted technology.
If you are a parent of a child who is primarily nonvocal and maybe has been using a type of iconic communication system, and you are recognizing that your child has really just outgrown it, it is something, they need something faster, they need something better. There's so much more that we can do in the world of augmentative devices. I am a huge fan of using augmentative device programs on cell phones and also on iPads. As you and I were chatting, we had just downloaded a really simple tap to talk program. So for this one, all a child would need to be able to do is just tap on what they wanted.
I want a drink.
And then that immediately pulls up a screen where there's water, juice, milk, soda, and smoothie. So maybe the child just wanted a drink of their water.
Water, please.
And it's that simple. And there's not a lot to manipulate. The child does not have to have really advanced motor skills at all.
We're seeing more and more organizations advocating getting an iPad because of all those features. But it's not just for kids who are non-vocal.
We have a lot of kids, who have significant impairment in their sensory regulation. They really are seeking visual input, auditory input, tactile input. And if they're learning to appropriately play with a cell phone or with an iPad or with a computer, it provides those levels of appropriate sensory stimulation. So you're getting appropriate sensory, hopefully leading to a decrease in some of those repetitive behaviors, and you're teaching age-appropriate play skills. You know, they have free apps even if you're working on verb use, and the child can actually scroll through the different pictures and practice talking and narrating what they see in the pictures. There's just a lot of wonderful things that you can get from devices nowadays. You know, whether we're looking at language, social, play.
For my son, it's quite the social thing. When he sees somebody else who has one, he gravitates to them and they start playing together. It really starts the conversation with the other child.
What games do you have? What apps do you have? Can I play that one? Can I see it?
Yeah. And a lot of the apps are super inexpensive or free.
Or free.
Which is, you can't be free. Free is good.
You know, so I mean, you might have that initial investment in actually purchasing an appropriate device, but then a lot of the software or things that you need, you know, are free or relatively inexpensive. There are also some really nice applications that might be a little bit more expensive, maybe like $20 or $30, where you can essentially download the entire, for example, PEX icon library for just that little initial, you know, investment.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. We're sandwiched here between two great interviews with two great men. We just talked to Joe Hill from Air Talk. What a great dad. I just keep saying that throughout the break. And he does dishes. I know I'm as they say, perseverating on that, but I think it's remarkable. And what a wonderful thing, you know, for all of us. As Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson comes in and talks, she co-hosts Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy, and says, you know, none of us picked this journey, but since we're here, there are things that happen that as a result of them, our lives change. And if we don't fight it too much, sometimes we discover something that we wouldn't have otherwise. And so here is this awesome dad that, you know, he didn't ask to belong to a club where he would have two sons on the spectrum, and yet he took that and said, well, while I'm here, I'm gonna leave things in a better place, and creates an app that is available for $2 that can help all of our children. What an amazing story. What a really wonderful story. And of course, coming up, we're going to have Dr. Jonathan Tarbox, who is an amazing person in this journey through autism that will touch your life in terms of the kinds of things that he's researching and the knowledge that he has. Absolutely wonderful. I just want to take a couple of minutes to talk about some more answers to our question of the day, which was, what milestone are you excited for your child to meet at school? All week long, we've been talking about autism in the school and what kinds of things are happening at school on both sides, good and bad, right? We're not all having the same experience at school. That's just a reality, but some people are seeing some good things happening. We want to focus on that to give us all hope, right? And there are some people who are experiencing things that are less than what we would want, right? And we all need to rally around that to make things better. But this question, somebody wrote in and said, I would like my son to read and write better. I wish he loved the subjects as much as I do. And this particularly strikes me because I really wanted my son to be a reader, and I now want him to be a writer. And I want him to enjoy those things in the way that I do. There's nothing like being able to read a book and escape into it and learn. Boy, if somebody enjoys reading, there is no end to what they can experience in their life and what they can learn, where they can journey to, right? It's a great gift. And then being able to write, whether it's creatively or otherwise, to express their thoughts and feelings on a piece of paper is an amazing, amazing skill that will serve them well in their lives, right? And especially what I'm hearing from this parent is that it's a joy of theirs, and we want to share the things that we're passionate about with our children. But like everything else, we can make these things more reinforcing to our children if we just focus on that very thing, making it reinforcing. I've shared before that my son was so busy that I could not get him to sit still for anything, let alone to read a book. And that worried me. Even before we had a diagnosis, I saw that and I thought, oh, I need for this child to enjoy reading and being read to. And what I discovered quite by accident is that if I gave my son a cold, it had to be cold apple, that he would sit still and hear a book. There was something so reinforcing about this big apple, because he was so little at that time, that was cold. And when we first gave it to him, he really couldn't even bite into it because he didn't have enough teeth to do that. And eventually he would bite into it, but take like a little itty bitty, nibble out of an apple. But it was all about holding it. I cannot tell you why, but that was so reinforcing to him to have that to hold on to, that he would sit still and hear the story. And to this day, my child loves to be read to, loves to hear a story, loves to go to the theater, and will sit still better than his peers, I have to tell you, if he's being told a story and it's being told at all well. He doesn't suffer bad storytelling, but if it has any merit to it at all, he sits and is enthralled. And we always hear that from teachers, that they expect that, in circle time, that he wasn't going to be able to hear stories because he couldn't sit in circle time to sing songs and do that kind of thing when he was little. He certainly can now. But they'll all say, boy, his ability to sit and be read to, he absolutely loves it. And of course, he's now enjoying reading, and we're working really hard to reinforce, because he'd rather have somebody read it to him, but he reads really well. He's far above his grade level. And so we keep reinforcing that. And what's really reinforcing to him is the computer. He loves to read on the computer, and loves to play with the computer and have it be interactive. And there are all kinds of programs now that can do that. The writing, by the way, a different subject in my house. So I've already said on the show that this is going to be the summer of creative writing, because my son, while he enjoys coming up with a story, does not want to translate it into the paper. He starts 4th grade next year, where they do all of their creative writing on netbooks. The school actually they got a grant a couple of years ago and has a little netbook for each student. So we're going to be working on keyboarding this summer so that he can write as fast as his mind will carry him. And in particular, it's that thing of taking what they're interested in. My son has been asking me for 2 years. He wants to make a movie, and he has the movie in his head. And I have said to him, we will make the movie as soon as the script is done. You have to write the script. And he's very excited about that. Now, that's not going to be the case for your child, obviously, right? But figuring out what would be exciting to them about writing a story. I know people who have had their children even write something really small and turn it into a book. There's all those services that you can turn it into a book, and the pride of that it sits on the coffee table, and then the child wants to write something longer, if that's something that reinforces your child. But finding, whether it's we always want it to be immediately reinforcing, but as the kids get older, we can work towards things that are reinforcing down the road. But what is it that's going to reinforce your child to make reading and writing as exciting to them as it is to you? I'm sure that you can find it. So spend some time on that. And another person who writes that their milestone that they're excited about is a peer play date. Yeah, those are one of the toughest things. We talk about play dates all the time and about how we can make that happen. And I think the key is planning and having expectations that are really small, only working on 1 or 2 things at the play date, instead of having the expectation that the whole play date is going to go wonderfully. Decide, okay, what we're working on for this particular play date is sharing, and that we're not going to worry about the rest of it. We're going to focus on sharing. It can be really helpful. All right, I'm told that Dr. Jonathan Tarbox is here with us in the studio, so we're going to take a short break and bring him in and come back and talk with him. If you have questions, now's the ideal time to be asking them. Stick with us.
The wheels on the bus go round and round, round and round, round and round. The wheels on the bus go round and round, all around the town.
Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, the host of Skills Live, and in honor of back to school, I've got a little project that you can do at home that will give your child a clear idea of what they're working for at school and help you to keep track of what they're doing. There are a couple of different elements to this project, and I want to show you first how it works and then how to do it yourself. So this element of the project stays at home. And what it says is, what are you working for today? So my son can look at this, and I like to give him 5 choices, but you can customize this for your child at whatever point they're at. 5 choices might be overwhelming to them, or they might need more choices, but you can put as many of these tags on as you want. And some of the things that I know that he likes that he might want to work for: video games, being able to swim after school, a toy. We like to get the little Happy Meal toy from McDonald's. You know, you can buy it without getting the Happy Meal. And he likes to work for Microsoft points. We're at that point in the game. And a play date. He likes to work for a play date. And these are Velcroed on so that I could switch them and put other things on. So this will hang in my kitchen, and each morning before he goes to school, he'll pick one and say, this is what I want to work for today. I made it colorful because he likes that kind of thing, but you could make it all in the same color if you wanted to do that. So he would pick this one off and say, I want to work for Microsoft points today, and this gets added to his little schedule. On the back of it, it just Velcros right on so that he can remind himself that's what he's working for, and his teacher can know that that's what he's working for today. And I broke up his day into the morning, recess, mid-morning, lunch, and afternoon. You'll notice that there's a 6th area. This is for his behavior. This is just for getting work done and paying attention, but this is for behavior, and he can be on green, yellow, or red. And my yellow and red stickers are there. So if his behavior was not being very good, this would come off, go back onto the Velcro, and he would need to put the yellow sticker on. When he was younger, he would have somebody else maintaining this for him, but now he's maintaining it himself. Also, there are stars and little tool symbols. So if he, at the end of the morning, if he feels that he has done a good job, he would rip one of these off the Velcro, don't you love Velcro, and put it right onto the morning like that, so he would know that he did a good job. If he felt that he didn't do a great job, and again, it's that self-monitoring that he's at. Before it was somebody doing it for him, but if he felt he didn't do a good job and he needed to work on it, then he would put the little tool symbol on. I didn't want to put a frowny face because I just want him to know that it's something to work on. And our deal is, at the start of this school year, that if he gets 3 stars out of the 5, then he gets whatever he was working for at the end of the day. Although he does have to stay on green. By the time he gets home, he's got to be on green. So he knows, and this is really a small one, so that he can look and chart his progress for the day, know what he's working for, and that when I pick him up from school, I have a clear idea of how he did. And if I start to see that he's constantly needing to work on things for recess, then I know there might be something to talk about with him or with a teacher. It's a really good way of keeping track of things. So how do you make this? It's really simple. I've made it a little bit more complicated because I want it to last. So I laminated it, but the Velcro is really an essential thing. That's the biggest cost in this, is the Velcro. You don't even have to use a computer if you don't want to, but if you want to use the computer, all I did was I went on Google and I searched for a scrapbook tag template. And I popped that in, and I could make a text box in it, and I could fill the text box with whatever I wanted. So that was simple. This was just a text box that I put in, but I could have done it by hand. And I did this on cardstock, and the rest of the paper is just regular paper, and as I said, I did it in different colors. So you can see on this piece of paper that I stacked my templates with my text boxes, and then I just cut them out individually. And I have here a sheet of laminating film. So I laid things out that I cut. Here are the little stars, and I can just stick them on the little green dot or red dot. It's sticky, so I can stick those right on, and of course I want to use as much of the paper as I can. Then I would peel another sheet of laminating, slap it on the top, cut them out. I have my handy little sticky dots for Velcro. On this one, when it got to where on the back to put all of the stickers, I put strips of Velcro. You could do that on both sides and just cut them out, but this was super duper easy to just peel off a piece of the Velcro and slap it right onto the thing, and it will last And it also is functional so that if I wanted to only have 3 things on here, I could. And I can change these out if I decide that these aren't being gratifying enough. I could change them to Star Wars or anything that your child likes. And I can also automatically change this, that as he progresses in the coming weeks, I can then start saying to him, oh, now you have to get 4 stars in order to get the thing on the back, and eventually say 5 stars. And to work towards generalization, I want to keep making this smaller and smaller. For right now, he's going to keep it on his desk, but eventually I would have an icon on the desk that would let him know that only during breaks to pull it out and take a look at it. And in that way, I'm starting to be able to fade all of this out. You can do this for your child at home, and probably the whole project takes less than 45 minutes, and it'll last a really long time, and it's adaptable. So a great project to track your child's progress, and I'm sticking to my lamination sheet. It can get messy, but it's really fun to do. So good luck back to school, and hopefully this will be helpful to you. Thanks. Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. And as promised, we have Dr. Jonathan Tarbox with you. It's Friday. I love Fridays because you come in and we get to talk about these kinds of things, research in particular. And you are the head of research and development here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders.
That's right.
And in particular today, I asked you to come back and talk about a subject that people have been talking about a lot lately, pica.
Absolutely.
So talk to us about pica, what pica is, and some studies that you've been involved in so that we know more about pica.
Okay, so pica is a pretty serious behavioral disorder, and it involves eating or ingesting inedible objects. So, you know, more mild forms of pica that you'll see are things like maybe, you know, wood chips or tree bark or, you know, scraps of paper off the floor. It's probably not healthy, but it's probably not going to kill the kid. But there's much more serious forms of pica that can make a child sick and or actually kill you. And so there are, you know, kids eating lead paint in old homes. That's extremely toxic, extremely poisonous. Worked with a kid once who ate a dead bird, roadkill. And then in the really most extreme forms, I've actually worked with individuals who have eaten things like batteries, car keys. One man that I worked with actually ate a pair of scissors, a necklace.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very, very serious business. And eventually, if left untreated, that will kill you. Eventually, if you continue eating things like that, it's going to be the end of you. So it's very, very serious business.
And about how often do we see this in the autism community? Is it something that's common or uncommon?
Yeah, it's fairly common. I don't remember the exact prevalence off the top of my head, but it is fairly common in folks with autism and other developmental disabilities. It's not something that every individual engages in, but you know, if you have a group of 30 kids, one of them's probably doing it, at least. So there's, you know, if you have a child on the spectrum, there's a decent chance that at some point they're going to pick up something they shouldn't, put it in their mouth. So it's something to look out for.
And what's the difference between a child who's having natural curiosity and mouthing things and swallowing them, and actual pica? How would we recognize the difference between those two things?
That's a great question. The easy answer is you'll know it. If your kid has it, you'll know it. It's something that's much more persistent. It's ongoing. Sort of the normal or sort of typical way that individuals sort of explore things orally is, you know, they'll try something out, it won't taste good, and they'll stop doing it themselves, or their mom will yell at them once and they'll stop, you know, or their dad will slap their hand or something like that and they'll stop. But if the behavior persists, even after you've kind of done the normal ways of discouraging it, then that's where it's something to be concerned about. And people with real, you know, severe pica, they're eating edible objects every day.
Okay. And I've heard people talk about it being a compulsion. So, you know, is it that there's something lacking in the diet, so there's a specific kind of thing that they're wanting to eat, or is it something that's happening internally that we're, you know, not able to know?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's actually a variety of causes. We don't know all of them. There is a very small percentage of folks who are missing a specific mineral that they actually are, that's contributing to their pica.
Okay.
So I think there actually are 1 or 2 published cases where purely through vitamin and mineral supplementation they eliminated pica. And I'm forgetting off the top of my head whether it was iron or magnesium or it was some basic mineral. Just through supplementation the kids stopped eating inedible objects. However, that's very rare. That's not, I mean, it couldn't hurt to try that first because it's the least intrusive thing. Just give your kid a multivitamin, you know, and that'll fix it. Then you can take your child to the pediatrician and have blood work done just to, you know, to check for vitamin and mineral deficiencies. So that's something you could check for first. I would venture to say that's probably less than 1% of people with pica. So it's not, you know, that's probably not what's going on.
But as a parent, is this ever something that we just want to wait and see what happens with pica and hope that they outgrow it, or is serious enough that we need to address it fairly quickly?
You know, my general advice with any kind of challenging behavior is wait and see usually doesn't make the behavior go away.
Right.
You know, we don't want to be sounding the alarm on every single little thing our kids do, but if it's a fairly serious behavior, and pica definitely is, and it's happened more than a few times, and it doesn't seem to be going away, so, you know, he did it this week, he did it last week, now next week he does it again. If it's not decreasing, it's definitely something to be concerned about, and folks with developmental disabilities and autism in general, the general rule is they don't just grow out of challenging behavior. The behavior is there for a reason, and so it needs to be addressed.
Okay, so what can we do about pica? What research has been done, and what can we glean from that research?
Sure. Well, the first thing to do with any challenging behavior, and I know you've talked about this a lot on your show, is a functional behavioral assessment, or functional assessment, or functional analysis. They all sort of mean the same thing.
Okay.
And they all involve figuring out the reason why the behavior is occurring. So the function of the behavior, or the source of reinforcement for the behavior.
Okay. And with pica, are there lots of different things, or is it usually, you know, we talk about the 4 usual suspects for challenging behavior. Is it the same for pica, or is it really usually one of the 4?
Well, you always want to investigate all 4.
Okay.
And when you think about it, what is the most natural consequence that a kid is going to get when he puts something inappropriate in his mouth?
Well, you definitely would get attention if somebody's there to see it.
Yeah, for sure. So that's something to, you know, be thinking about. However, the vast majority of research that I'm aware of has shown that it's usually automatically reinforced.
Okay, that's what I was afraid of, because that's the hardest one to address.
Yeah,
for me, anyway, I look at it and go, what do we do then? Okay.
It's the hardest one.
Okay, so once you've done the FBA and you've determined that it's not attention-driven, that it is self-reinforcing, what do you do then?
Right. Well, there's a few very specific forms of pica, specific forms of automatic reinforcement. One of them is actually nicotine addiction. And this one will be pretty clear to you. If your child or family member or whoever is eating cigarette butts, it's probably not a coincidence. It's not just any old inedible item. There's actually documented cases of nicotine addiction because of eating cigarette butts. And so once the person gets addicted, then they're going to be on the lookout, you know, for cigarette butts. And that can be very toxic as well. There's all sorts of toxic stuff in cigarettes in addition to nicotine, you know. So that's very unhealthy. Luckily now, especially in California, not very many people smoke anymore, so you don't see as many cigarette butts laying out around on the sidewalk and in the park and stuff, but still, it can be very serious. So if your child's eating cigarette butts, the first thought probably is this could actually be nicotine addiction. That's possible. But if it's just sort of general automatic reinforcement, probably what's going on is some form of oral stimulation. So there's something, you know, basically it feels good to have something in your mouth is the source of reinforcement potentially. And so the treatments that have been shown to work generally, the first thing you always want to do is start with positive reinforcement. So basically, give the kid lots of reinforcement when he isn't ingesting inedible items. And specifically teach and reinforce other leisure skills, so other things to do with the child's time, essentially. So appropriate play skills, anything like that. However, at the end of the day, I think most of the research has shown the two probably the most likely to be effective treatment components are blocking, what's called response blocking, which is very, very difficult to implement, and it literally means following the person around constantly, and every single time they reach for an item, an inedible object, you literally physically block them.
Okay.
You don't restrain them, you don't hold them, you just block their intent.
Right.
And they might immediately go for it again, and you block it again. Go for it again, block it again. I've done research on response blocking, and it's very challenging to implement. You literally have to follow the person around. So at first, this might be the type of thing where you need full-on constant attention from a parent or a one-to-one aide or something like that.
Right.
And if it's serious pica, it's probably worth that effort and that amount of supervision to block the behavior.
But I would imagine that consistency becomes the hugest part, which means that, taking a drink, answering a phone, using a restroom, all of those things are going to be potential pitfalls.
That's right. That's right.
Wow. Okay. So what else is in the arsenal besides response blocking?
Right. So you probably want to do response blocking, but that's never enough in itself for any behavioral intervention. You always want to add in other components that focus more on replacement behaviors. So when in doubt, or I guess I should say when all else fails, a replacement behavior that's pretty likely to work for pica, for automatically reinforced pica, is just something else in the mouth that's more appropriate. So, there's research showing, just giving kids free access to snacks decreases pica. Well, that's kind of obvious, So let's say popcorn or celery or something like that gives the child something else to do with their mouth, makes them less likely to then bend down and try to pick up an inedible object.
Okay.
However,
Gives
you can't
them that
just
chewing.
Yeah, it gives them an alternative behavior that produces a similar type of reinforcement, oral stimulation.
Okay.
However, you can't just eat constantly all day, right? So there's limitations to that. There are some other options that don't look very socially appropriate, but just sort of other things to put in your mouth, like chew toys, teethers, parents complain that it looks like a dog toy, that it kind of, and that's true to some extent, and so that's probably not your first line treatment, maybe not your first option to give a mouthing toy. But at the same time, if it's a choice between, having your child chew on a teether versus having your child eat rocks off the ground that are, toxic, it's a pretty obvious choice.
Right. And there are some cooler things that are out there that are mouth stimulation things that we got for my son. There was a necklace that they have for even college kids that it kind of looks like a yin and yang, and it's on a really organic ribbon and everything, so you can even put the ribbon in, and all the kids in school thought it was a really cool thing. So he only had it for a short period of time, and they faded it out. But pica was not his issue, but he was just needing to chew, teeth cutting and stuff.
And there's some that have other functions built in, like teethers that vibrate when you bite on it, so it provides even more stimulation.
And they come with different, like you can get even to the point where you can buy seasonal little toppers on them that vibrate. So, if it's spring, they have the spring set of vibrate things to stick on. They look like little pencil tops. And holiday ones. It can get very expensive. You don't need to have all those, but they do make them to make it a little bit more reinforcing to the child to use it. Okay, so, but when we implement these kinds of things, when we give them the choice of other things, they're more likely to decrease the pica, as well as the response blocking. And that basically what's in our arsenal, or is there anything else that we can be doing for pica?
That's pretty much it. I mean, that's what the research has shown to work. And there's other more intrusive punishment procedures, but we're not going to go into those. And that's really not your first line treatment. You need really, if your child has pica, significant pica, you need a qualified person who's an expert in treating severe behavior. You really need a BCBA or a behavior analyst with a lot of experience with severe behavior. It's probably not the kind of thing you're going to fix on your own, especially if it's automatically reinforced. It's pretty tough. You need someone with professional, top-level experience.
Okay. And really important to find the function of the behavior. This is going to sound like a strange segue, but we just adopted a dog, and
Congratulations, I think.
No, not in this circumstance, not at all. And the dog is engaging in a lot of challenging behavior, and we're asking. I said, let's get experts in because I don't know what this behavior is, and so let's get experts in. And the experts are saying that it's too aggressive. They can't even work with the dog. So, yes, I know it's difficult, but not even one of the challenging behaviors that we're specifically worried about. The dog, she's about 18 months old, but she's trying to eat our couch a little bit at a time.
Pica.
Yes, exactly. And this is what made me think about this: is that we're seeing that it doesn't happen sometimes, and so I'm kind of doing my own little FBA on why is the dog eating, and when does she eat, and how many hours can we be gone before she eats, and what toys can we leave there that she chooses those over the. Very interesting to me. But I started thinking about it in terms of pica, and when we come back after the break, I'm going to talk to you about some studies that you've done with pets and our children, getting our children to appropriately interact with pets. So there's my segue.
All right.
From the pica to the animals. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we are going to talk about having a pet in your home and how you can be working with your child to have that be a positive interaction. So stick with us. More with Dr. Jonathan Tarbox when we come back.
Welcome. I'm here today with Cecilia Knight, who is the Director of Training for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and today we're talking about how to keep kids healthy.
I think it's really important for, of course, every child to have a pediatrician that the parent is comfortable with and that the parent is seeing regularly, someone who's an expert on autism, who understands the issues related to autism.
A lot of kids who are on the spectrum are a little bit obsessed with one area of food. Any suggestions?
I think it's really difficult for parents because many of their children either self-limit or they don't like certain textures. Their pediatricians, after testing them, see that they are deficient in iron and other nutrients that are so important. And so it does reach the levels where many parents need to seek help. Maybe from something like SOS, Specialized Outpatient Services, or another feeding clinic in their area. Someone who can address specifically, how do I get my child to eat this texture? How do I get my child to eat something other than French fries?
So what advice do you have for parents in terms of realizing what's the autism and what's something else that has to be addressed?
As we all know, every child is different, and from one child to the next on the spectrum, their symptoms are different, and what they struggle with medically is different. You do run into a problem with many physicians saying, well, that's just symptomatic of autism, and so we're not going to treat it. And I think it's really important to be sure that if they need to see a neurologist to address seizures, that they're getting that done. If they need to see a nutritionist because of the food issues, that they're getting that done, all while being treated by a pediatrician who maybe can help oversee that. But I think it's not a great idea to dismiss everything as that's just autism.
I always try to imagine a child trying to do therapy while they've got all these biological things going on, and how could they possibly concentrate?
Right. Well, our clients are just like you and I. It's very difficult to concentrate if I have a headache or if I have an upset stomach. And so I think it's really important to first give the child the opportunity to feel better, whatever that means for that child, because again, each child is very different. But I have had children that once you address a specific food allergy, then the symptoms of stomach pain or, a sty in their eye that wouldn't go away or constant diarrhea, until we addressed that medical issue, it's very difficult to concentrate on treatment.
Sure.
And then once they could address those issues, then treatment, went more the way we were hoping it would go.
Absolutely. And there's all kinds of things that would come under that heading, right? If they had sleep disorders, we already said food allergies, but what about vision problems?
Absolutely. The hard thing is, depending on the child's ability to communicate, sometimes it's difficult to have vision tested or to have hearing tested. So working in combination with someone who could help expose the child to the contingencies that would be in place, for example, for a vision test, and practicing or being prepared may help in those situations, but it's definitely a real issue.
Wow. So maybe even using your ABA program to practice for the vision test.
Right. It's very difficult for parents to find a pediatrician often that they connect with, but I think I encourage them to keep looking for a pediatrician who has specific experience and has other clients maybe with autism, and they have a good rapport with other parents. Someone who can listen to their concerns about sleep or about seizures or about eating and not dismiss them. Because, sometimes we uncover things that are surprising or that were unexpected, just like with the rest of us. So it's important to keep looking for answers, I think, to all of those issues.
And the healthier they are, the happier they're going to be, and the quicker they're going to learn.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Autism Live. Our special guest right now is Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. It's Friday. It's the 11 o'clock hour on Friday. We're always thrilled to have him here. He's such a wonderful resource. And I said that when we came back from break, I wanted to talk about pets.
Okay.
Because we know that having a pet has the potential, at least, to be a positive experience for a lot of our kids.
That's right, yeah. And actually there's a decent amount of research that shows that owning pets contributes to a lot of sort of quality of life outcomes. So increases in happiness, decreases in stress, just sort of overall life is better with pets.
Yeah.
Not to say that it's a substitute for effective treatment for depression or something like that. That's not that.
No.
But just overall there is associated positive outcomes. And actually there's research showing that I don't know if I totally buy this, but it's interesting that the overall costs of owning a pet are actually less than the overall costs of medical expenses that decrease because of owning a pet. Yeah, so
this
it
would
actually
not be
is
true in our
cost-effective.
case right now. But it's nice to know that that's a possibility when it's working right. I would also think that there's a social element to it for our kids, that whenever anybody to my child's school, brings a pet to the gate, that child becomes the rock star for the moment.
That's right. So it can be a major conversation piece. It's something that will allow your child to stand out that other in a positive way.
Yes.
And that be focus of attention for other kids and something to basically talk about. So
exactly.
An easy way to get into that social social dance.
Icebreaker.
An icebreaker. Yeah.
I'm hearing all these things. We just adopted a pet, and none of these things are working out because our pet has imprinted on the three of us, my husband and my child and I, and loves us and is fine with us. Anybody else walks by and the dog turns into Cujo.
Oh, man.
We're trying to figure that out. She's had a traumatic past, but in any case. But I'm really particularly interested in, you guys did a study about when you have a pet, because sometimes our kids, they engage in challenging behaviors and that can transfer to the pet.
That's right.
And you're having a non-productive relationship with the pet. And you had a particular study that you did that for me was very eye-opening. So tell us about how the study came about, what it was, and what you discovered.
Sure. Well, as you say, a lot of the kids that we work with and kids in our families can have sort of challenging interactions with pets. Kids could become aggressive with pets for sort of the standard reasons that we normally think about, like it produces attention, it gets a big reaction out of parents. It could be actually just due to the reaction of the pet. So occasionally the pet is just in the kid's face too much and wanting too much attention. And so if the kid kicks it or pinches it or throws it, that'll produce the response that the kid wants, which is leave me alone, right? And other times too, maybe it's just the sort of magnitude of the response. So if the pet jumps up and runs away, that could be kind of funny to a kid, and not just kids on the spectrum, but frankly any kid.
Yeah.
So yeah, we do see this from time to time, and it was something we were interested in addressing. And so actually, we did have a family that asked us for help with this in particular. So we took a look at the behavior. We did a functional behavioral assessment, and what it determined was that there were basically two reactions that the kid was getting for his aggressive behavior towards the dog. And one was attention from parents, which makes sense. That parents were having a big reaction. Don't hit Fido. How many times have I told you not to do that?
Exactly.
The parents are afraid of the dog getting hurt, but of course the parents are afraid of the dog biting the kid if the kid continues to do it, right? And in this case, actually, that had happened. The dog had bit the child in the face. Luckily, didn't produce any real serious damage, but still, there was potential for it escalating and becoming much more serious.
Right.
And so one sort of source of reinforcement for the kid's behavior was attention from parents.
Right.
But then the other one was just merely the dog's reaction. And so what the child did was, when he was aggressive with the dog would yelp, jump up up in the air and run away. And it kind of looked like a cartoon. It was funny to the kid, essentially. And I don't mean to sound callous, but it was kind of funny to the kid. The dog had a very large reaction.
Right.
And so there were sort of two sources of reinforcement there. So the first thing that we dealt with was, we thought, and this is the standard approach, this should always be your first line treatment in any challenging behavior, is no longer provide reinforcement for the challenging behavior.
Right.
It's called extinction, right?
Exactly.
But then also teach and reinforce an alternative behavior that's more appropriate. So in this case, what we wanted to do was teach the child to pet the dog appropriately and increase that behavior, because we thought, well, that's a nice way for them to interact, right? And if the kid's busy petting the dog appropriately, then perhaps he won't be engaging in the aggression towards the dog.
Right.
So we tried that first, and what happened was we increased appropriate petting a lot, but then the kid would also aggress towards the dog.
Right.
And so it didn't actually decrease the challenging behavior.
It didn't become a replacement.
It really didn't become a replacement.
It just hand in hand.
Sort of a supplement, yeah.
Okay.
And so the kid would sort of pet the dog with one hand and attack the dog with the other.
Okay.
Yeah, and so that way he was able to earn his reinforcer, but also still get away with the behavior. And the dog would continue, and of course the parents would no longer pay attention to it. They were doing extinction, which was great.
Right.
But the dog wasn't doing extinction, because when the kid would attack it, the dog would of course yelp and run away. You can't blame it.
Sure.
Right.
And we can't control the dog.
No, yeah.
So we got to look for other things,
Yeah,
right?
we can't tell the dog to end extinction.
Could you please ignore that behavior? Could you put that on
just let the kid hit you. Don't worry.
Not going to work.
No, it's
but that's real life. We have that when our child does something to another child. We can't say to another little child, you can't react to that either.
Absolutely not. And frankly, most parents are not going to be okay with just letting a kid hit them,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So then the next thing we did was we said, well, okay, clearly what needs to happen is the kid can only earn the reinforcer if he does not engage in the challenging behavior.
Right.
So we did what's called a DRO, or differential reinforcement of other behavior, and that's sort of a fancy sounding term, but all it means is giving a reward or a reinforcer for the absence of the behavior.
Right.
So basically it's teaching the child to refrain from the behavior or inhibit a behavior.
Right.
It's reinforcing omission of the behavior.
Right.
So we started with a very short duration of time, 10 seconds I think we actually started with.
Because that's really the key with that, right? Is that you got to set the time of when you're going to deliver a schedule.
That's right. And so what we wanted to do was make it so that the kid could earn the reinforcer if he didn't attack the dog, and he only had to wait 10 seconds. Or he could try to attack the dog, we'd still block it, but he wouldn't earn the reinforcer. So it's a real simple choice here. So the only way, and he could still pet the dog nicely, and that's great, but you're not getting any reinforcers unless you refrain from attacking the dog.
Okay.
So what we did was we started out with 10 seconds, and it looked kind of ridiculous, right? And we had to be right on top of him. Okay, just wait 10 seconds, and then you get whatever the reinforcer was. Oh, and by the way, each day that we practiced this with him, we did a preference assessment to determine what reinforcer he wanted to work for. And so we usually just give him a choice between 3 or 4 different things.
Okay.
He'd pick one, and then that's the reward he would work for during that session.
Okay.
And so it could be an M&M, it could be some free time on the computer, it could be Game Boy for a minute or two, but some small but meaningful reward.
Meaningful to that individual child.
To him, yeah, exactly. And so it wasn't what we wanted him to earn or what we thought would be appropriate, is what he actually chose.
Right.
And each day was something different, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And so we started with 10 seconds, and what we would do is gradually increase the time if and when he was able to refrain from attacking the dog. Okay. And what we did was we gradually faded it up to 10 minutes. And so it got to the point where we'd tell him, okay, as long as you're cool with the dog for the next 10 minutes, you get X, Y, and Z.
Right.
And it was no problem. It faded it up to 10 minutes. And then at that point, we said, okay, we asked the parents, well, let's, time to train you. Let's have you do it now, right?
Right.
And they said, well, okay. And it turned out, actually, he had already generalized the behavior. And so he wasn't attacking the dog even when we weren't there anymore. And so it was a real nice outcome.
And key to that, though, starting with that small amount, I think. Yeah. How did you arrive at 10 seconds?
10 seconds? Well, there's a couple different ways to decide where you want to start with your, we call it the interval, the DRO interval, which is just the duration of time the kid has to wait before getting the reinforcer, as long as they're not doing the challenging behavior.
We talk all the time about jargon, and I have to remember when I'm making fun of it, the DRO interval.
DRO interval.
I don't know about you, but my eyes start to glaze over. I go, what?
Huh?
But remembering that we're going to reinforce for the absence of the behavior on a regular schedule.
Yeah, it just means don't do the behavior for this amount of time.
And then you get this.
And then you get the reinforcement.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So a couple different ways of doing that. A really good way to do it is to actually collect data on the behavior to see how often the behavior happens when the DRO is not in place. And so what you're looking for is, well, on average, does the kid have the behavior every minute? Does he do it once every 10 minutes? Is he doing it 2 or 3 times a minute? And you want to set the DRO interval, or the amount of time the kid has to go without the behavior, shorter than the shortest amount of time that the kid normally doesn't do the behavior for anyways.
And you make it shorter so that you ensure that you've got success.
That's right. That's exactly right. And so the way ABA works is you're basically just overwhelming the child's environment with consequences that make the positive choice easy. So you're just stacking the deck against bad behavior, stacking the deck in favor of good behavior. So the kid could still hit the dog, but why would he do that when all he had to do was wait 10 seconds and not hit the dog, right? So he made the choice really easy for the kid. And then the reason why ABA works is you use these powerful rewards with really easy choices and then gradually increase the demands or increase the requirements, and you do it so slowly that you're still making it a very easy choice for the kid to have good behavior. So if he can wait 10 seconds, why not wait 12 seconds? And I think that was the next step, or maybe it was 15 seconds. If he can wait 15 seconds, why not wait 20 seconds, right? And basically what you're doing is getting the individual used to engaging in those good behaviors for that period of time. And we gradually increased it to 10 minutes, and it worked great, but you do have to be slow and you have to be systematic.
And if at any point, let's say you had increased it to 20 seconds and the child engaged in the behavior, first of all, you made sure that they didn't get the reinforcement, but would you go back to 18?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so that's common. You oftentimes you find that you increase the requirements a little too much, so you have to step back. And that's not a big deal. It doesn't mean it's not working. It just means you have to step back. You increased it a little too fast. That's very common. And then what you want to do, though, is decrease the requirements and then look for the behavior to get good again, and look for that to be stable. And then once that's stable, then gradually increase again.
It's like prompting.
Yeah, exactly like prompting.
Okay, so what's really striking to me about all this is, first of all, I'm fascinated because I think of you guys as knowing everything about ABA and that you're just going to be able, you're like your machines and you can spit out what the response is. And when I hear you talk about the process, what I learn is that you guys are constantly making adjustments just like we have to.
That's exactly right. And you know, the problem with, or a major problem, not the problem, but a major problem in autism treatment is everyone's sort of looking for a magic pill, or everyone's sort of looking for a be-all, end-all, or everyone's looking for a cookbook, you know, or a recipe. Oh, you want to fix your kid? Follow these 3 steps. It's not like that. You know, behavior change in any way, and whether it's you want to learn something, whether you want to increase your exercise or learn a new musical instrument or learn a new language, it doesn't just happen overnight. Behavior change always happens gradually, and if you want to be effective in changing behavior with yourself, with your child, with anyone, you have to be kind of an artist. You have to be sensitive to ongoing changes. You have to be thoughtful. You have to plan ahead, and you have to respond to changes. So if your kid's doing really well, great, up the requirements. If he's having a tough time, that's fine. Stay there for a while or step back a little bit, but you have to be sensitive. It's a puzzle that you're constantly solving. It's not a recipe that you're following.
Which is amazing to me. And what that does for me as a parent is it gives me license to not always have the answer.
Oh, yeah.
Because I always think that I'm supposed to have the answer.
Yeah,
when
of course.
Fact,
we always do as parents.
It's, yeah, exactly. But it's really remarkable, and the fact that you guys never give up, that you know the answer is there. And our kids are smart. The fact that, you know, initially when you said, okay, well, we're going to reinforce the good behavior and hopefully that'll get at it.
Yeah, and we sure thought it would work. We're sure that's the standard treatment. It always works, right? Well, not in that case.
Except that the child was so smart that he's figuring out how he's going to get his reinforcement and have his cake and eat it too. And our kids are smart. That's not a bad thing.
It's a great thing.
Sometimes they're smarter than us, but I love that, you know, then we have to figure it out. That's fascinating. Okay, we're going to take a break and we're going to come back and talk about the Autism Research Group and how you can be involved and tell Dr. Tarbox and other researchers what kinds of things you would like to see researched. So stick with us, we're going to talk about that.
I am grateful for Autism Speaks because they allow families like me to have hope.
They're working towards
having these children live better lives.
There's a space for you. Yeah, there's a world for you, and there's a community that is behind you.
And one that has really been able to be the singular voice for people who are involved with and who care about autism.
I do have autism, but I don't let that become a disability for me. Autism Speaks is going to continue to help those who need it, and just look at all the stuff they've done so far and you will be impressed.
3, 2, 1.
And you need to support the walks. We have to raise awareness, but we also have to raise funds to do the work.
I'm grateful for Autism Speaks for one main reason, is they are allowing me to focus on the research.
The work that Autism Speaks has been doing is critical for keeping autism research on the radar screen.
We proclaimed 2 April as the World Autism Awareness Day. I'm very proud of the UN and thankful Autism Speaks.
Getting the health mandate bill passed in New Jersey particularly, we needed to be able to make an argument, not just do this because it's the right thing to do, but do it because it's cost effective.
When everyone else told me nothing was wrong with my son, I got information from a website that told me something wasn't right.
I am so proud of Autism Speaks for creating these beautiful ad campaigns, which have reached people who are not affected by autism and have also created a greater climate of compassion and understanding.
It's been really great for Bachman to have gotten involved with Autism Speaks early on. I think everybody here feels like they really make a difference.
To make sure that we generate as much money as we can for Autism Speaks so we can all solve this puzzle together.
There's no way we could have come this far without our families, without our supporters to date, but there's so much farther we have to go. And everybody's invited to join this cause. We need all the help we can get to make the difference we know we can make.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and our special guest right now is Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. And you have an exciting new group that you're working with, the Autism Research Group. Tell us about what they do and what your goals are right now and how we can be involved as parents.
Well, Autism Research Group is an independent nonprofit research institute that we launched in April. And it is basically, our purpose is to do research that matters to families of children on the spectrum. So we're doing research in a variety of areas, but we're focusing mostly on treatment and real-life treatment research that produces real outcomes.
Love it.
So yeah, there's a lot of research out there. Probably 90% of autism research is really important stuff, but it doesn't really produce a real change for the families who are involved in it right then.
Yeah.
And so we hear complaints about that constantly from the parent community, saying, well, okay, this is great, and maybe what you're doing, most of the research is being funded. Maybe 10 years, 20 years down the line, there'll be implications for how it might be able to help a family. But how about my kid, like today, who can't brush his teeth, or who is having a tough time getting a job, or we can't go to the restaurant and have dinner in peace as a family,
Right.
So we're focusing on research that addresses real life issues like that.
Okay, well, I think that's amazing. And so parents can write in and tell you what they would like for you to research, correct?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we have a big part of our research we're calling our Parent-Generated Research Initiative. And what it is a whole line of studies that we're developing right now that are based on parent preference. And so the usual sort of scientific approach is someone who's an expert in a subject matter, researcher, like I'm an expert in autism, I suppose, is supposed to come up with a great idea that will contribute to the scientific literature. You do research on that, and then you publish your results. And hopefully that helps somebody at some point. Well, we're sort of flipping that whole process on its head, and we're going straight to the parent community first and saying, okay, well, what do you care about? What do you want? Like, what do you want to get out of autism research? And so we have a survey right now on our website. If folks go to www.autismresearchgroup.org, there's a link that says Make Your Voice Heard, and folks should click on that. If they have a family member on the spectrum, click on that and take our survey. It won't take more than 10 minutes at the most. It's 10 questions that basically ask family members to rank in order of importance different topics in autism research, and then has a bunch of open-ended questions that literally just say, we're going to do research on autism, what do you want us to do? And we want folks to write us a novel. I mean, literally, give us as much information as folks, have or want. And then we're designing studies on the basis of those answers. And so actually one of the first studies that we're designing is specifically parent training. So we got a big response saying we want more training. And so now we have another survey, which is a separate survey that's specifically for parent training. And we're writing a grant proposal right now to get funding to pay for parent training and to evaluate its effectiveness. And so what we want to know, I mean, we have lots of great ideas for what we should train parents on, but we want to know, we want to ask parents, well, what do you want help with, you know? Because, clinicians have lots of great ideas, and we sort of know what we want to work on, but there's got to be things that are falling through the cracks. There's got to be issues that just aren't being addressed enough, and so we want to hear directly from parents, what do you want training in? So there's another survey on our website that says Parent Training Survey, and so we want folks to click on that and literally tell us, what would you like training on? Whatever. Teaching my kid how to get dressed in the morning, or dealing with homework, or dealing with, getting a haircut, the dentist, whatever it is. Folks should just write down what they need help in. Now, I do want to make one thing clear. There's a movement right now in California with some funding agencies that don't have enough money to pay for the treatment that they are mandated to pay for, and so they are suggesting that parents can treat their kids instead of having professionals do it. And so it's called various things. It's one of the main things that it's called is the parent training model. And so they're suggesting that basically with maybe 6 months or so of training from an ABA professional, you as a mom should be able to just take over your kid's treatment now. This is ridiculous. There's absolutely no research to support this model. It's not justified by the scientific literature at all. It's a money-saving scheme, is essentially what it's about. So I don't want your listeners to get that confused with what we're talking about with parent training. What we're talking about with parent training is not a substitute for professional ABA treatment. It's a supplement. It's a complement to professionally delivered treatment. So your kid, especially if you have a kid under the age of 7 or so, should be getting intensive, one-to-one professionally delivered ABA. In addition to that, you should be getting training in terms of how to optimally help your kid maximize the skills that he's getting. So that's what we're talking about. So we're doing a separate study, a separate grant to pay for that, so parents won't have to pay for it. What topics do you want training on?
Okay, good to know. Thank you for the clarification. And as always, thank you so much for coming in and giving us your time. It's so fun to hear these things and have my mind twisted in a different way than I normally think of, right? But it's great and it's very useful, and our watchers, our viewers tell us all the time that they really love when you're here on the show. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
And we're going to take a break. We'll come back in just a few minutes to close out the show, so stick with us.
Good evening. How's everybody doing tonight? My name is Brett Nyler, and I recovered from autism when I was 8 years old due to the extraordinary and selfless efforts of Dr. Doreen Grant-Pichet, Kathy Visconde, Evelyn Cumm, and many other amazing therapists. How does a person show gratitude for being taken from a future of institutions and the inability to communicate even basic needs to getting to have a normal, independent life? What do you say to the people that gave up so very much to give you that life? Since I was 8 years old, my parents have always talked realized that would have been you if not for Doreen? Or imagine what your life would be like if they hadn't decided to be therapists and had done something else with their lives? Or do you know what those people sacrificed? How much they gave up to get you here? Of course, I always agreed with them because in my head, intellectually, I understood that all of it was true. But I never really felt it. In my gut, in my heart. I never really felt how great a gift I had been given because of what they had sacrificed for me. Well, I don't know why it took so long to happen. At least it did. And I finally felt a massive sense of gratitude in the pit of my stomach, in my heart for what they had done for me. It was about 9 months ago. I was 18 years old and I had a really great day at work. I was just made Employee of the Month at the grocery store where I work. I had just gotten my first semester grades in college, which were very good, and I overall just had a really great day. It occurred to me that none of the things I had done that day would have been possible without Cart and Dr. Grandpichet's help. College, work, driving my truck to a friend's house, none of it would be happening. I got home from work that night, and I went to my mother and said, the next time you talk to them, tell them I said thank you. Thank you for everything. At first she didn't know what I was talking about, but she got it after a few seconds and started to cry. She hugged me and said, don't worry, they already know. I told them. I'm told, but I don't really remember, that when I was 4 years old, one of my therapists really liked the song by the band Oasis called Wonderwall and taught me how to sing it. I guess it was super funny. My mom always heard my struggles with the words of that song, and they dedicated it to me when I graduated from high school. I thought it was nice, but what is a Wonderwall anyway? My mom said it's someone who gives up everything to do something that everyone else thinks is impossible. From what I have been told, it has been a very hard fight to get this kind of care funded and accepted to the point that it is now. And I have been told that CART has had a major role in getting this kind of care to many, many children. I thank you for all that you have sacrificed to help me and those like me. So, at this time, I think it is only fitting to dedicate those same words from the song Wonderwall back to CART, and especially to Dr. Doreen Grandpichet. Here it goes. And all the roads you had to walk were winding, and all the lights that led you here are blinding. There are many things that I would like to say to you, but I don't know how, because maybe I know you were the ones that saved me, and after all, you're my Wonderwall.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We save that clip for Fridays towards the end and I try not to watch because I get into the ugly cry. Isn't that all of our dream that at some point our child is able to stand up and say, yeah, I'm Employee of the Month and I'm going to college and I have my whole life and I don't even remember going through this. And there he is in all of his beautifulness, standing in that position. And he was a child. I just want to remind all of you that his mother was told when he was diagnosed, don't get attached to this child because by the time he's 10, you're going to need to have him committed to an institution. So don't get attached to this beautiful little child and this wonderful citizen and beautiful young man. Right? I get a little emotional about it. In any case, and you know, if you're ever watching when we show the clip from Recovered, the little blonde boy in Recovered who has that look in his eyes where he just doesn't understand, that's that same young man that you just saw. The same young man. I really encourage you to watch Recovered. It's an amazing, amazing movie. You know, when we get to the end of the show, especially the end of the week, I always like to end with a little parent-to-parent moment where we can talk about what's real and what we have to look forward to and what we have to get through, quite honestly. And as I was listening to Dr. Tarbox talking, and I think it's important that we all know ABA has shown to be effective with all of our kids in terms of progress. And I know that as a parent, progress is so important to me, that my child make progress. A lot of times people get into these discussions about, well, we don't want to give people false hope. Well, nobody ever wants to give anybody false hope, but hope is important to all of us. And when there is progress that can be had, there's nothing false hope about that. For all of our kids to make the progress that they individually can is something that's really important. And so many of you, I always say this, that, you know, I wish for you and I hope for you what my child had the benefit of, what I had the benefit of as a parent. And that is exactly what Dr. Tarbox was talking about, being able to have a quality ABA program with a BCBA involved, helping you to design the program, bringing trained therapists to your house to work with your child. That's what I had the benefit of in my home. That's what my child had the benefit of. And it was still hard. Can I tell you? It was still hard, but I still wish it for all of you. Absolutely. But in some cases, it's not possible yet for you to have the benefit of that. It's coming. I assure you, there's people working day and night to make sure that at some point it can come to you. But if you're sitting there and saying, yes, but my child is 4 now, and by the time you get here, he or she's going to be that much further behind, you don't want to wait for that. That there are other ways that you can begin to see the progress. And I need for you to know that, rather than sitting and waiting. That, you know, the best possible scenario is that you can have that provider close to you and the BCBA is working with you on a regular basis. If you can't have that, there's still the workshop model, which we talk about all the time in the show, that if you're in a more remote area and can't get to that BCBA, that a BCBA comes to you on a regular basis, helps to train you, helps to train your team, and that's, you know, that's something really valuable. And we've had so many families talk about how useful that is to them. Sometimes that's not possible for you either. And when that's not possible, having access to skills and CARDI learning, because you gotta start somewhere, and sometimes it does fall to you as the parent. But I want you to know that that is miraculous in and of itself, that you have the ability to do that now. Yep, it's not the same as that best case scenario, but we've seen time and time again that that's not going to be available to everybody. So now, you know, it used to be it was either or. You either can have it or you can't have it, and that's not the case anymore. So I want to make sure that you know about that. All right. We're at the end of the week, and it's been an exciting week, and we've got even more stuff coming up for you next week that I'm really looking forward to. In the meantime, though, I want you to know that as this show ends and as this week ends, the conversation continues, and there are lots of ways for you to participate with us in the coming week. So you're seeing some of them flash on the screen in front of you, whether it's email or calling us or Facebooking or Twitter, all of these different ways that you can be having the conversation with us and let us know your thoughts, feelings, suggestions, concerns, what you like, what you don't like. My shoulders are broad, I can take it. You can be watching us on Blip TV. You can be watching us on YouTube. You can also be watching us on iTunes and very soon you're going to be able to listen to us on iTunes. Hey, if there's a way that we're not coming to you that would be really useful to you, that would make it just easier for you to learn from the things that are happening here, let us know, because I don't know everything, right? There's so much that I don't know. And if you let us know, you guys asked for a way to pause and rewind and search things, and so we gave you Blip TV. If there are more ways, more servers that you want us to be on that would be helpful to you, we really want to do that. We're committed to bringing this message to you for free, so that's the big criteria. We want for you to be able to access this when you want and for free. That's our main thing. They're going to force me off the air here, so that I want to make sure that you know that I know you can do this. You will survive this. I'll see you again on Monday, and until then, please give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.